Welcome to my channel. Here, I don't just speak, but I invite you to think. Throughout my videos, I've questioned the deepest held beliefs, from philosophy, the dynamics of religion and faith, to personal identity. I ventured into the controversial because I know that only in honest, critical confrontation do we grow. My voice is a search for truth, unafraid of what is difficult. If you join this community today, you don't just watch, but you engage. Together, we open the door to a courageous dialogue, one that transforms us. Subscribe, share, and let's keep questioning, growing, and seeking truth together. Well, hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you again today, as always. For anybody new, welcome to the channel. So glad to have you here today. I've got a couple of great guests, so be sure to check out their channels. Their links are in the description of the video. My friend Khalid and Nathaniel, I consider these to be brothers. The one gentleman, Khalid, is a Muslim, so he'll have an interesting perspective from that. And then my other brother, Nathaniel, is a Catholic, so he brings a unique perspective. And it's great to have these different views all together in the same room to have a polite discussion about happiness being the topic today. You know, I'm still struggling with a little bit of a cold, so my voice is going in and out. I do apologize about that, but hopefully it'll last for the whole show. I'm going to bring both the gentlemen up here in just a quick moment. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody for checking out the show today. I want to let you know the channel is still growing, and that's growing because of you, and I really appreciate all of your support. Well, first I want to bring up Khalid and Nathaniel, and I'll let each of the gentlemen introduce themselves really quickly, and then we're going to just jump right into it because Nathaniel's on a bit of a time crunch. But as always, after Nathaniel leaves, Khalid and I will continue on, and then he had 7 specific questions that he wanted to address that I posted in the description of the video, and then we'll go through those question by question. And afterwards, we're going to open up the panel for you to join as well. And Khalid said he should be able to stick around to answer any of your questions. If you have questions for Nathaniel, you can leave them in the chat, and I will try to highlight them and have Nathaniel address them before he leaves. And again, you can always contact these gentlemen directly through their YouTube channels. So do check their YouTube channels out, and they're doing collaborations together, which is really great to see. Khalid, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody and let them know where they can find you and what you're up to?
Cool. So my channel is Helpful Ahmadi. So Ahmadi is a kind of international group of Muslims who believe in love for all, hatred for none. So my name is Khalid or Khalid, however you want to pronounce it, but I'm essentially a Muslim. So that's why I put all those details in the little caption below. And I love talking about happiness. That's kind of the fundamentals of what I talk about. I've written a book on happiness. I never try to sell anything I produce because this is like based on the teachings of Islam, and in Islam we're not allowed to sell the faith. So I've made a free book. I really appreciate Objective Ethics ping a link to it. He's so fantastic in so many ways. I love that he keeps calling me brother. I should be trying to say that as many times back as possible. I really appreciate the kindness and love and openness that he shows in his shows. So yeah, and today we'll be talking, I don't want to do that introduction about exactly what we'll be talking about, but I'm going to be talking about a particular aspect of happiness, because in my book on happiness is 34 chapters, 34, it's a happiness course. So it starts with individual happiness, then community happiness, and then how you're going to project happiness into the future, create a better world. And so part of that, chapter 4, is the environment. Probably talk about that in a bit, but why the environment hasn't any bearing on happiness. I think I'll talk about that later, but this is just an introduction about myself at the moment. So yeah, I love doing polite conversations. I have been debating people for like 20 odd years or more. Yeah, that's what I'll say about myself for now.
Nathaniel, do you
Hello.
want to go ahead and give yourself an introduction, brother?
Sure. Yeah, hopefully I do a good job. My name is Nathaniel, Taurus Necros Productions on YouTube, Village Economy on Substack. I'm a Catholic layperson, a family man, a businessman, and I do media and stuff like this. Basically, what it's turned out to be is a record or track record of my thoughts and opinions, which is very helpful, especially as business grows and I hire people and stuff like that. Because in the Catholic world, you have a lot of folks that kind of want to know if you're believing the same things as them, and in the anti-Catholic world, which is much bigger, you have a lot of folks that want to know, basically how your ethics affect the way you do business. And I'm very interested in fixing what I see to be the issues in economics that have affected the whole world, especially because of the Catholics, and the main issue, basically all of it being related to usury. So that's why I do this. Although I do solicit donations for what I'm doing here, not too aggressively, but basically just so it can be more self-sufficient and I can increase the quality of what I'm doing because I don't have a ton of time to put into it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys stopping by. One of the things that we were talking about backstage is how we need more of this, where we have people that have different views. I don't like to use the term worldview because I think it's just such a vague concept of what a worldview is, right? Even people that are of the same religion or same political affiliation are going to have nuances to their beliefs, and people are so different. So I don't even know what a worldview even is. But we have different fundamental views, right? I'm an agnostic atheist. As I mentioned before, we've got a Catholic, we've got a Muslim. Obviously, there's a lot of differences in the way that we see the world around us, right? But we have a lot of similarities. You're going to see throughout this conversation that we are very polite to each other, very respectful of each other, and there's no excuse for behaving in any other way, in my opinion. Just because you have disagreements with people doesn't mean you need to be belittling other people or fighting with other people. You've all heard me, if you watch my channel at all, you've heard me say many times, I don't have brothers. I don't have friends or sisters, or I can't even talk. What do I have? I have a lot of confusion.
Yeah, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I have a lot of confusion is what I have. I don't have any friends, and I don't have enemies. I don't see things that way. I just have brothers and sisters. I have brothers and sisters who I really love to engage with, like these two brothers here today. And I have brothers and sisters that I really wish I could disown, but I can't, because you can't get rid of your relatives, right? So that's just how I view the world around me. And we need more of this, people coming together. To give Khalid some real credit, speaking of this, I was so impressed with you, brother, because Khalid came onto my channel, well, I think it was maybe last month, and he was, the topic of the show was he was going to show me proofs that God had written the Quran. I can't remember the exact title, but by the end of the show, I was just not convinced. And I know that Khalid was frustrated because he believes this very much. It's very important to him. And despite his frustration, he was extremely polite to me, extremely polite. And I know that he was frustrated. He was emotionally affected by this, by my lack of agreeing with him. And I was, of course, polite to him. I wasn't being rude to him at all, but I just wasn't convinced. And I just was so impressed with you, Khalid, because I know how difficult it is when we believe something so strongly and other people don't agree with us. This is where people start to crash out. And that you maintained your composure as a gentleman, and you're extremely polite and still continued to be well articulated. And I just thought you set such a wonderful example of how people should behave when their ideas aren't being accepted by other people. Instead of getting angry and disrespectful, you maintained your own self-respect. And I think that you set a wonderful example for people. So we're going to continue that today, because I guarantee you we're going to have some different opinions today as well.
Sure.
Okay, so Khalid has 7 questions that I'm really excited. I think, was it 7 or 9? I can't remember. 7 questions, and they're really interesting questions, pretty loaded up. I mean, just reading them, even seeing them at face value, some of those, so the way they're worded is like, oh my goodness, so I'm really excited to get into those questions. But initially, when they had reached out to me, they said, do you want to do a show on happiness? And so I started doing a bunch of research on happiness, and I hadn't done before. And I just found out some really interesting things that I wanted to run by Nathaniel and Khalid today. After a little while ago, a few weeks ago, Khalid had reached out to me and said that he actually has some very specific questions he wanted to ask. So I'd already done all this research on just the general topic of happiness, with the idea that I was going to be talking to a Muslim and to a Catholic in mind. So we're going to kind of come at this from two different angles here. I'm going to go through just a few statistics that I had come up with and just let Khalid and Nathaniel both respond and just see what they think about that. And then we were going to get right into Khalid's talking points. So let me share my screen here. Which one's, I think this one's mine.
I like your questions too, Khalid. I'm looking at them.
Yes, this is mine.
These
Okay.
are different than what I remember. They're good questions.
They are good questions. It's going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so I might need to make this a little bigger so I can see what the hell I'm even doing here. Okay, so when I looked at happiness, okay, the first thing I did was I looked up the happiness index. And the happiness index is a lot more than just self-reporting. Okay, so you can see here in this bold, and I have my screen enlarged. I can no longer see the StreamYard screen. So I hope that you guys can see what I'm doing here. Can you see me highlighting this here?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so it looks at things like GDP per capita, social support, healthy life expectancy, freedom to make life choices, generosity, and here's a really big one in my opinion. This is one of the biggest ones, is this perceptions of corruption, and that has to do with government in particular, right? So this is the different criteria that goes into the happiness index. And it turns out when you look at the countries that are at the top of the happiness index, and then Norway is another country that I have been doing a bit of research in. They're like number 7 right now. And Norway typically ranks in the top. They always are in the top 7. They're oftentimes in the first place. So they're just barely out of the top 5 here. The lowest ranked countries, Afghanistan, Syria, Leone, Lebanon, and Malawi. I also looked at something that really affects our happiness as people. Well, what's going on here? I don't know here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I looked at something that really affects our happiness as people, and it's crime, right? So the red areas here mean very high crime. Anything going to pink, this lighter color here, this is like mid to high crime. And then as it gets into blue, these are the lowest crime rates, okay? So you can see that there's a tremendous amount. We saw Afghanistan was one of the lowest countries on the happiness index. It also happens to be one of the highest countries in the crime index. I think they're like number 4 in the world of the worst crime, for example, right? So there is a correlation. The countries with the highest happiness index were Norwegian, up here, like the Norwegian countries like Norway. We saw Sweden's up there, Finland's up there, Poland, Denmark is up there. Denmark is somewhere over here-ish. Where the hell is Denmark? There it is.
Can I see what is Jordan's level? Jordan is in the
Jordan
Middle
is
East,
where is
next
Jordan?
to
Over
Israel.
here, right?
I have to zoom
Further
in.
down a little bit. Yeah, that kind of seems. Syria, is it just below Syria?
There it is.
Saudi, Iraq, Syria.
I was so
But
close.
maybe
Is there a way
that's
to
too
zoom in? You
small.
might need to
That's
zoom
where I
in.
live. Is it possible to zoom in? Because basically, my country where I live is so safe, you don't need to close the door. But I've
Jordan,
got a
right there.
feeling-
So Jordan's right there. So 39.8. So the way this works is the top number, the worst crime in the world is 80. They rank it at an 81. And so 39.8 is in the bottom half, which means safer.
Nice.
Like the lower the number, the safer. So you're just below the halfway mark.
How does it compare to the UK? Because the UK is not safe at all, where I also used to live.
So UK would be
left. Yeah, up. Yeah.
Yep. So UK is
one's
at
safer?
48. So UK is a higher number is less safe. So
Okay, makes sense, yeah.
Jordan was 39, UK is 48. America is at 49. So we consider America to be fairly unsafe. It's not as bad as some places like Venezuela, right? But it's still pretty unsafe. Anything above basically like 35 is where it starts getting a little bit sketchy. But if you drop down to the bottom here, like anything under, like I said, about 35, Thailand, Nepal, look, Norway, see in the low 30s. Anything low 30s and below is actually really good. Switzerland, Finland, Rwanda, Denmark again. And what's really, China and Japan are at the very bottom here. Like this is the bottom of the list right here. So you got China, Japan. And what struck out to me about this that I found so interesting as looking through this is if you look at the countries with the largest atheists per capita, the countries that have the lowest crime rates and rank the highest on the happiness index are the countries that have the most atheists per capita. Whereas if you see, we saw China, Japan, the very bottom of the crime index. Sweden was very low. Denmark, very low in crime. Very high in happiness. Very high in happiness. Very high in happiness. Very low in crime. But when we look at countries that have like, well, let's start here. So Vatican City, the highest crime, one of the highest crime rates in the world. And
what? It's so funny because it's not even a proper country.
They are at a 100% Christian population per capita. Muslim countries.
It doesn't sound right. They're all priests. Who's robbing who? The Pope.
I know, right? You would wonder. And so you look at countries like the highest Muslim population, and like we saw that Afghanistan, if I get it to come up here, is one of the highest. They had like 98% Muslim population, and yet they're one of the worst countries in the world as far as high. I don't know why this keeps going. As far as really high in crime, really low in happiness. Now, I want to be really clear here when I say this. I do not think all Muslims or all Catholics are criminals or unhappy people. I want to be very clear about that. I think I'm not trying to generalize everybody, but I do think it's very telling that these statistics, when we actually look at happiness, when we look at the countries that have more Muslims, they tend to rank very high in crime and low in happiness. And when we look at the country with the most Catholics, they're extremely high on crime. They're one of the highest crime rates in the world.
A quick answer would be they're not measuring happiness. They're measuring something else, which they think they call happiness.
So you get, as I said before, on this happiness index, it actually does measure. These are the 6 key factors.
You know, Japan. I mean, it makes me laugh. Japan's on the happiness list because it's got such a high
Japan's not on the happiness list. They're on the low crime rate.
Oh, okay.
Low crime. Right. So China and Japan are the 2 lowest crime rates.
Okay.
Right. So that's for atheist populations, they're also among the very lowest crime rates. We looked at the crime rate, right, by country. So we go all the way down here. Oops, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This direction. Whoa, too far. So China and Japan are both extremely low crime rates, most atheists per capita. So between happiness and crime, the countries that have the most atheists per capita tend to rank the best. And I'm just wondering what you guys think, why you guys think that might be. There was another statistic.
Nathaniel, who wants to go first? I don't mind.
Yeah. Either one of you, whichever one you want.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot to respond to. I can go first. These are pretty broad. I guess the Vatican's small, but it's also extremely unique of a place as far as how it relates to the world around it, and who comes and who goes and who lives there and stuff like that. But generally speaking, looking at all the other countries, you're talking about these huge groups of people and these different things affect it. And yeah, I mean, you could consider it surprising that religion has the effect that it does, especially if you think, Christianity's good and stuff like that, or Islam's good. Honest to God, there's 2 things I would say. First off, I would say that the high atheism, and these are pretty bad, these are pretty general guesses. I don't know much about this. I'm not a geopolitics type of guy or a world, like modern world guy. I don't have a great understanding of it. I just kind of have things I hear and vague guesses. I know some like Finns and stuff like that. They're great people. They're kind of known for drinking and for being like a little bit rowdy. And so I think they're probably happy for the same reason people in Appalachia sometimes are happy, because they can do stuff like that. Nobody really cares. But I would say that in my experience, atheism tends to thrive in places where people have a lot of comfort and leisure, which I don't think is so prosperous places, which I don't think is necessarily a disproof of atheism or a proof of it. I think when you have time to think about things, that's kind of where your deeper philosophy tends to come out. And atheism, in my experience, is a type of philosophy that just takes a lot of doing to get to, either on a cultural level or on a individual level. People don't tend to arrive at atheism spontaneously. There's usually a sort of a structure or a lot of research that goes into it. It's not like the natural inclination for people at large. So I think it would kind of be causation, not correlation, or however you say that. And then the other thing I'd say, and this is probably where it's offensive, and I don't want to say it, but I would guess actually that it has more to do with climate and with race than with religion or prosperity is important. I mean, Afghanistan's been invaded and destroyed in a lot of ways, so I'm not surprised. I don't know how they report crime in Afghanistan or how that works. I know it's kind of a strict, so I'd be curious about that. But as far as crime, you tend to have more crime in hotter places and certain, you know, if you have a very homogenous country like the Scandinavian countries, which I know they're always talking about immigration up there and stuff like that, but I understand them as very homogenous places, and there tends to be less crime in places like that.
Just a quick question. I don't want to interrupt too much, but how much have you traveled around the world, Nathaniel? Because you said there's more crime in hot countries.
Not very much. My wife did a lot. I love world history. I wish I could have traveled, but no, not very much at all. I've only been in the United States and briefly to Canada.
I'll just quickly disagree with that from all my travels. I've traveled a fair amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Disagree with what I said or the fact that
no, I would disagree with the fact that hot countries have more crime. I mean, I live in a hot country. I don't even need to close my front door. It's a Muslim country. Just to give like one bit of information kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah,
I think the Middle East is very unique, though. The Middle East, because of the geopolitics in that region, I think that particular part of the world, there would be a lot of other factors as far because the religious profile and the fact that the whole world is constantly focused on the Middle East and the economics of the whole world are tied to the Middle East. I think that would have a much more significant effect.
I would agree. Like Syria,
I was mostly thinking of like North Africa, Italy.
I went to Syria before they had their war and whatever, right? And it's not them fighting themselves. There are all sorts of outside influences trying to steal their oil. Like Donald Trump said, the US went into Syria to steal the oil. He was quite clear about that, right? So if everybody's completely destroying your country, if you have no law and order, you're going to have more crime. You're just going to have more problems. People are starving, and Western countries are coming in and destroying it. And well, that's not a good way to measure how safe or polite or the nature of the people. And they were very kind people before the war happened. I haven't been since the war. I did try to attempt to go into Syria, but they didn't let me in with my British passport because there were literally bombs dropping at the time. So they said it was a bad idea.
Different cultures have different definitions of crime. That's like
But it's not really culture. If other countries are invading your country and destroying it, and there's no police force, they've destroyed everything in the country, then you might have more crime because there's no law and order left and no systems left. So that's what I'm saying. And they were really good when there was law and order, you know. So I think you're right, objective, by saying that it does matter that if people are coming in, there's all sorts of other outside effects, which are literally people bombing your country.
That's a huge. And I do want to point out here, there are some Muslim countries and some Christian countries, like right here, for example, Saudi Arabia, that do have low crime rates. So I want to be really fair, and I don't want to be like just swinging this broad brush or painting with this broad brush and saying all Muslim countries are going to be high crime, low happiness, or Christian countries are going to be high crime, low happiness. That's not my point at all. The only thing that I'm pointing out, and it did surprise me because I expected. You hear so much talk about atheists have a higher suicidality rate and this and that, which I found that I did some research into that. Claire brought that up in the chat. And actually it turns out that statistic is not quite accurate when it comes to self-deletion. And we got to try and police our language when it comes to that. What I mean? But when it comes to people like self-deleting themselves, straight people, or what we call cisgender people, their self-deletion rate is higher in atheist communities than it is in religious communities. However, when it comes to marginalized people like lesbians, gay, trans people, their self-deletion rate is significantly higher in religious communities than it is among atheist communities. And when I looked into those statistics, the experts were saying that the reason for that is because when a person identifies as being gay or trans, they're oftentimes vilified by the religious people in their community.
I disagree with all of that so much from all my experience living in. There's something so wrong with the statistics you're collecting.
Well, that's just what the numbers bear out.
I could probably find alternatives, but anyway, but I mean, I know, having known gay people in like Jordan, where I am, not really an issue there.
Jordan sounds really nice.
Yeah, they're really nice people. I've even got an interview with one of my gay students in Jordan, and it's like,
and I don't think, and again, I don't think, again, the broad brush thing, we want to be careful. I don't think that all Muslims are bigots. I don't think that all Christians are bigots at all. I think they could be. In fact, I've said on my channel a number of times, and I think I've said to you both in conversations, that I see religion has done a lot of good things. In fact, one of the statistics that I've pointed out is that when it comes to international aid, nonprofit efforts, religious organizations count for almost 90% of the international aid that's distributed around the world. Religious organizations do. So we cannot say that, oh, religions are all bad. That's not fair. And that's not what I'm trying to do here. But just like I said, the only reason I even came up with these statistics and did this research is because I thought the topic was going to be about happiness. And so I looked into it, and I was actually shocked at these numbers, that the numbers, there was so much consistency.
Yeah, I mean, I could give some answers quickly to that, but I didn't want to disrupt too much, Nathaniel.
I want to hear your response, and then we'll get into your 7 questions, because I think that'll be really fun as a segue.
Yeah. I think the happiness index is more interesting than the crime, which might be surprising, but like, and talking about Scandinavian stuff, what do you think about what I said? That, see, the way I interpret those statistics, not that you can really draw too many conclusions, is I think when people are happy, when a society is happy, especially in the West, you tend to get more atheists, not the other way around. I don't think atheism leads to happiness. I think happiness sometimes leads to atheism, which would be consistent with religious teaching, is that if you are satisfied with the world, you tend to forget, God and morality. Well, not morality, but God. Tend to forget God.
My quick answer, because I try to not make long answers, is I think these answers, these indexes are junk from a lot of experience I've got, and they're not actually measuring happiness. They're measuring like how much money there is in a country, which are not exactly to do with happiness. They're not like literally what happiness is. And I mean, having been to Denmark, having had a student in Denmark, like I joked with a student I had in Denmark, they say Denmark's the happiest place, and she would just laugh. Like, people barely like being in contact with each other. And I've got a friend from Iceland, and he always jokes about how people barely can communicate in Iceland. They're not very happy people. They're usually drunk. So the short answer would be, this could be propaganda or junk statistics. And if you actually, I would recommend traveling. And even, I'll tell you something, I made a video just yesterday. I would say poorer parts of a country are actually happier. So I'm going around Egypt at the moment. And when I hang out at a cafe in a poor part of the city in Cairo, they're all together communicating over a board game. But when I just went earlier on today to a fancy area of Cairo, they're all on their phones, having expensive coffees or whatever, but not communicating. Just like in London and maybe in the US, if you go to a Starbucks, the whole community isn't talking to each other in a Starbucks usually. I don't know if that's what your experience, but it's terrible in London. Nobody's communicating in London in a Starbucks. So poor places somehow, even within a country, are doing better. So it's actually the opposite sometimes of the statistics they're giving. Like if they're saying how much money a country or people have means happiness, because that's what it's measuring, GDP per capita, right? Some of the poorest people are the happiest, and that's actually based on religious teachings. Like in the Bible and the Quran, we've got similar ideas. Like it's harder for a wealthy man or a fat man, Nathaniel, you can correct me always, to get into heaven than go through an eye of a needle or something like that. How does that go?
Yep. Am I muted? Yes. Rich man.
Yeah.
It's harder for a rich man to go through an eye of a needle harder for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to go to heaven, but all things are
And it's
possible with
exactly
God.
my experience, actually. Rich people are less happy, in my opinion. Like,
Yeah.
they're just relaxed, they're free. The more money you have, the more money you need, it seems. I'm not anti-money, because in Islam we're encouraged to make money, but also to spend it on charity. So that's the difficult challenge there.
I feel like we should ask, what is happiness? I feel like that'd be a better question.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
so that would be my quick answer. I think this is a load of junk, and there's so many. I just watched a video in the Netherlands about how assisted suicide is almost 5% of the death rate. It's like really bad.
try to
These
use
people
self-deletion
are really
or
bad on happiness.
try to say self-deletion just for terms of service.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. YouTube, I hate that. I hate that we have to police our language like that because we're all adults here. But you know how it is.
I'll
You got to
practice.
play the game.
Let's go. You should talk, Daniel. You haven't had a chance to talk in a little while.
So that's my quick answer. I don't want to make it too long.
Yeah,
That's
no. We
answer
want to
that.
get into your question, but I do think this, for my response to this, I think a lot of what I'm hearing and what I would offer this as well is response would just be anecdotal. I've lived in 3 different countries. Or excuse me, I've visited 3 different countries. I've lived all up and down the West Coast. I regularly do business and travel from San Diego all the way to Seattle. So I'm all up and down the West Coast of America, and I've visited the majority of the states. Basically west of the Colorado Rockies. I've never been to the East Coast, but I've visited probably a third of the states in America, as well as because I lived in San Diego and I do business in San Diego, I've been down to Mexico a number of times, and I've been up to Canada once. And so I just think, I've traveled fairly extensively. I know people who have visited like 52 countries or 15 different countries. I said 52, sorry, 15 different countries. They're all over the world. I haven't traveled that extensively, but I've traveled more than a lot of people. And I don't think that weather correlates to any of these statistics, like Nathaniel was saying. That doesn't map onto my experience.
In Seattle, really?
Yeah, I don't think that weather. I think I've not noticed a correlation to happiness and weather. Now, if you're talking about extreme weather, that might be a difference, right? Like super, super extreme weather. But I know people who intentionally, a lot of people, they call them snowbirds. They retire in Arizona. And I would never want to live in Arizona. It's like 115 degrees out there right now, probably. Like right now, it's probably 115 degrees in Arizona. That's ridiculous. I would never want to be around that. But people go there all the time because they love the sunshine. Same thing with people love to live up in the mountains, be around the snow. It's just a matter of where do people want to be. But I do think that there is a balance when it comes to the money thing. I don't think that money itself can bring happiness. I think I've talked to Khalid about this for sure. I don't know about Nathaniel, but I've talked about it on my channel a lot, that when we chase things like money and things like, alcohol or drugs or illicit sex or fame and fortune. I mean, people chase all kinds of things to try and gain happiness. And I use an analogy that I actually learned when my conversations with Khalid, when he talked to me about the mirage, right? From when the Quran talks about the mirage and what a specific type of illusion that a mirage is. And I think that was such a beautiful story that Khalid told me. And I use that example all the time when I talk about these things that people chase that are just a mirage. When people need self-respect, that's what people are searching for happiness, right? They really need self-respect. They chase money, and when they chase alcohol or drugs or what all these other things, it's like being out in a desert, just like Khalid and I were talking about, right? When you're in the desert and you see those heat waves rising over on the horizon, you are dying of thirst and you think that's water, and you spend your last bit of energy to go there and you find out it's just dry sand. That's the same thing as what I see as chasing money or anything else to try and get happiness. But that doesn't mean that a certain amount of comfort in life doesn't help you to maintain your happiness. Like being able to have a roof over your head, food on your plate, the bills are paid. I mean, my life is significantly better now that I've made money. It's not worse. There is a point that I had to deal with where I started making more money than I needed, and I had to start wrestling with that because Khalid's right. More money, more problems. You're right. It becomes this trap where suddenly my boat isn't big enough. My car's not new enough, blah, 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 blah. Right. You start having all these weird problems that aren't even problems. I used to struggle to put food on my plate, and now all of a sudden I need to have a nicer Mercedes. It's just really weird what money can do to you, but there is a balance to all these things, right? That's what I'd like to say to that. And then I think, unless you guys have anything to add to that, think we should get into Khalid's questions. Do you want to do that now?
I want to add one quote from Thomas Aquinas, because I actually think that's a really significant topic, but I won't talk about it a lot. But just the fact that you do need comfort, because on the conservative side, where I happen to live, which is annoying. A lot of people like to say, okay, you don't need safe spaces. Trauma is just imaginary, and it's a big thing that bothers me because I take psychology very, very seriously, and especially a lot of like the women in my life have been highly affected by these sorts of things, and it is Catholic teaching that you do need material things as well as immaterial. You have immaterial needs and material needs. So, but here's a quote from Thomas Aquinas from De Regno. For an individual man to lead a good life, two things are required. The first and most important is to act in a virtuous manner, for virtue is that by which one lives well. The second, which is secondary and instrumental, which means you use it to do these things, is a sufficiency of those bodily goods whose use is necessary for a virtuous life. And that's where money, these sorts of things. So they're both necessary.
Yeah.
That's it. I just want to share that.
We gotta eat. It's true. Yeah.
Yep. I thought it was more profound, but
no. I think it's great. Yeah. So do you want me to? I don't know. So I'm thinking the first thing I need to do is explain how does the environment tie into happiness, because I was having a back and forth between you and with Objective Ethics, because you were kind of surprised, weren't you, when I said I'm going to talk about the environment? You said, what's that got to do with happiness? So maybe should I quickly try to explain that?
However you want to do it. If you want to go through, just start with your first question and work your way down the list for symmetry, or it's really up to you, brother.
Cool. I'm going to do like a 1 minute introduction to like the whole book. I'll do like a 1 minute, really quickly explanation to how this whole happiness philosophy works. So I've got this book. It's linked in the description. Thank you very much, Objective, for that. It's a happiness course, 34 chapters. And I'll just mention some of the titles so you get an idea of the course. And it's all free, by the way. I'm not selling anything. First chapter is direction. If you need direction in life, otherwise, psychologically, you're not going to be happy. Chapter 2 is reality. What is reality? What are the fundamentals of what you actually need? Money, chapter 3. Like, how do you use money? Can it buy happiness? How do you use it effectively? Number 4, the environment. If you see yourself, for example, as a scourge on the world, like you're a virus, you're a detriment to the world, you're not going to feel happy about yourself. But also, if you think the world's constantly about to collapse, there's global warming, blah, 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 that's also, you're not going to be particularly happy. If you don't think there are solutions to the world problems, then your world is going to collapse on itself, and there's nothing you can do about it, that's not going to make you happy. And like, if you don't think like there's a God that maintains the world and it'll be all okay, these are all different reasons not to be happy. And I'm going to give practical, logical solutions to these problems or these perspectives. So that's basically the idea. And so chapter 4 is the environment. And the big question is, are we a virus? The idea is that some people call us a virus, people who think that the human race is bad for the world, right? That's the overarching the question, but there are sub-questions to deal with that. Like, are we bad for the environment? And I'll break it down. So question 1, children, are humans a virus? So I like to have a one-word idea, children. Like, having children worsening the problem? So I love to start with a verse of the Quran. People might not fully understand. It's like poetry. You have to contemplate it. That's why I have the book for you to read it afterwards, to contemplate it. And in the universe, the Quran says, or God says in the Quran, God has made it big and imposed the balance. So by the way, I might have changed God for we, like when God often talks in first person in the Quran. But anyway, has made it big and imposed a balance. You cannot transgress the balance. So weigh everything with justice and do it. Do not try to fight the balance. So the rough idea, very briefly, is that we think we can harm the world. We have some limitations, but we can't. We have some freedom to cause some destruction, but we're not that powerful. Okay, and I'm going to try to logically explain why that's so in my book. I'm just going to read this very briefly, short paragraph. Some say that we are destroying the environment and that by having children, we make the problem worse. Those who claim that we are a danger to the rest of life on Earth are saying we are special. I haven't heard anyone say that any other species is particularly bad for the world. In reality, we are part of nature, and as much as any other species, it makes sense to say that since the rest of nature has an incredible balance, we must be part of it. It is scary how much power we do have, but we shouldn't overestimate ourselves. We may cause some destruction, but just like other species, we are unable to destroy the earth. We may be compared to a virus that grows rapidly and destroys what is around it. But as with other species that grow rapidly sometimes, that growth and destruction always stops. Our growth as humans is already coming to an end, and we are dying out. But most people do not know. So that's a thought on one section of, are we a virus? Are we destroying the earth? I'd love to hear a response.
I would say that, well, Nathaniel, I want to hear you first, and then I'll go.
It's I really want to talk about like industry and economics and stuff like that. But and I was reading this, so I kind of got ahead. But it does start talking about that. But this is really about, I guess, natalism or antinatalism, and this has been a very significant thing in my life. I really think that it's been the main reason I am doing what I am doing and all that kind of stuff is because, my parents are divorced, my siblings are scattered, none of them are particularly religious people. And I came to religion. I wanted to be married. I didn't want to get divorced. I wanted to have a lot of children. We just had our fourth, and we've had 2 miscarriages. So those are immortal souls too. And it's really a battle in the world right now to have children. I think that I think the destruction of the environment and things like that, I think that all stems from economics, and economics is the management of your resources, of people's resources within a certain group of people. So the idea being that if you grow the group, then you consume these resources faster. But I mean, it's like you said, it's like any traditional philosophy or doctrine will teach you, and any experience, in my opinion, any experience with the natural world doing work like I've done butchery, I've worked in a factory, I've printed cardboard during Corona for Lean Cuisine and Hot Pockets, stuff like that. So you kind of see that really the mismanagement of resources amongst people is the problem, not the amount of people, because so many things are wasted. So many things are destroyed for so many vain reasons. I mean, they called us an essential business, and our goal was to print 1 million Pop-Tart boxes every day. It's like this is literally an advertisement. That's all it is, and it's literally garbage. It's just sent to people to be thrown away. That's most of the economy. That's most of people need things to live, and they pay for it by working these jobs. It's not really their fault. It's a very disordered system, and I think that that's the cause, not the children. I don't think children are the cause. And I'm staunchly pro-life. I am pro-life way beyond conception. I think most people who are pro-life don't do anything to assist parents, and I do think that the powers that be in the world we live in manipulate, especially fathers, because married fathers are the most naturally powerful and influential and conservative demographic in any society. And I think that they are manipulated in the West by being isolated, so that they have to work so hard just to take care of their children and take care of their family. And that's a big part of the instrument that perpetuates the system. So I think a lot of like the reason antinatalism seems plausible is because that is how people are held down, is they're encouraged to have children, and then those children are held like a hostage, and you say, you know, you have to provide them this expensive life just to satisfy, you know, the society around you. So if that makes any sense, that's my initial. I'm very emotional about this topic.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there, and this is such a great question. I mean, all these questions are good, but I think looked at your list, Khalid. This is actually, I think, my favorite question, because I think this is the most important question. All these questions are really good. Tough to rank them when they're also good, but this question really stuck out to me. And I want to share something. I'm going to share my screen here with you guys. I don't know if this will just automatically replace yours. Let me, okay. So what we're looking at right here is a population growth chart in billions of people, okay? So this is the 1800s. We had about 1 billion. We finally hit our first billion people. I think it was like 1750 or something like that is when we hit our first billion people. 200 years, we're at coming up on 9 billion people, or 8.5 billion people in 250 years. Now you got to figure human beings have been on this planet for 300,000 years. Okay. We didn't even hit 1 billion people. In fact, we didn't even hit just a few million people about 12,000 years ago. It was the agricultural revolution, right? When we started animal husbandry and farming, that suddenly the population started making these big jumps into now millions, like 15 million up to 30 million. Then we hit 100 million, a few hundred million, but still that took thousands of years for us to get to 1 billion people. And then all of a sudden in last 250 years, we've added 8 billion people, 7.5 billion people, right? Where the population is growing exponentially. It's undeniable. So what is that doing? What is that number actually doing to the environment? I was watching a documentary just the other day, actually, about oh, of course, now I'm going to draw a big blank. What the hell is it called? It's the Mariana Trench, the deepest place in the world, right? It's like 30,000 plus feet deep. And yeah, so over 30,000 feet deep. And when you go down there, which they're starting to explore down there using high-tech machines and stuff like that, you know what they're finding? And this is a place that's uninhabitable. Human beings can't even go down there. I think there have been a couple people that visited in really high-tech, super dense submarines that were able to resist the pressure, but basically no human beings have ever been down there. They're finding microplastics in the animals, in the plankton and stuff like that that's down there, in the organic material. They're finding microplastics, human litter in the deepest place in the freaking world, underwater, that humans can't even inhabit. This is our CO2 levels. CO2 is a major greenhouse gas component, right? That leads to global warming and climate change. In the last 800,000 years, the CO2 levels have never been over 300 parts per million up until the Industrial Revolution. Right now, we are at an all-time high for the last 4 million years at 485 parts per million CO2. And again, this all blew up with the Industrial Revolution. And I've got all the statistics that I encourage you guys to look at on your own. Present atmospheric condition of CO2 is the highest for 14 million years. Concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere were as high as 4,000 parts per million during the Cambrian period, about 500 million years ago, and as low as 180 parts per million during the Quaternary Glaciation of the last 2 million years. Reconstructed temperature records for the last 420 million years indicates the atmospheric CO2 concentrations peaked at approximately 2,000 ppm. This peak happened during the Devonian period 400 million years ago. So we've seen the Earth has gone through these massive spikes and lows. Human beings weren't around for that. That was due to volcanic activity, right? And during these times, most life could not survive. Like a lot of life could not survive. It was the life on this planet was like down to like microorganisms and stuff like that. During
I would disagree with that. It's kind of literally the opposite. When there's more CO2, there's more life.
No, that's not true. That's not true. It depends on what kind of life you're talking about. But these are actual statistics.
Biomass, like the
but biomass has nothing to do with life per se. Biomass is the amount of energy that's available on the planet. It's an energy statistic using organic material to measure energy, recyclable energy.
Biological, no, I disagree. But
Well,
yeah,
let's look
we
it
can,
up. I'm
we,
sure
you
that's
could
what
check
it
it
is.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, biomass. Biomass energy right there.
Well, biomass is biomass.
The
Biomass
total
energy
amount
is
of
another
weight,
thing.
the total quantity or weight of organisms in a given area or volume. Organic matter used as a fuel, especially in a power station for the generation of electricity. So organic of organisms isn't human beings. Just because there was a lot
No, I
of
never said human beings. I talk about at the time of the dinosaurs, we didn't
yeah,
exist, did we? I'm
but
just saying.
but I'm saying that
CO2 is life.
CO2 is not life for animals. Like you're talking
It
like
is.
human beings, dinosaurs, things of that nature. No, biomass does not equal life for animals per se. These, like I said, the majority of the life on this earth for the long history of this earth was simple molecules like algae, mosses, things of this nature. It insects, like the dinosaurs, large animals, dinosaurs and mammals have a very, very, very short lifespan. The dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. I think they lived for a few hundred
So
million years.
you know me, I don't like to debate too much. I'll just state what I know, right, quickly, and then people can research it themselves. When there was more CO2, when it was hotter, there was more life. It's called biomass. You can let people search for themselves rather than us going around in circles. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to give the statistics and people can look
Sure.
themselves at these are the actual where the CO2 levels are, how it leads to actual global warming and climate change, and then think about the climates that human beings can exist in. So all of this, and the other thing to remember is that these spikes, when you actually look at these charts, these spikes, massive increases in very short periods of time. When the planet does this to itself, it happens over very long periods of time, very slowly, and the planet adjusts. And we also see that there were 7 mass extinction events because life, when the planet goes through big changes, it wipes out all the life on the earth because life adapts to its environment. When the environment changes, life cannot live in that environment, which, like oxygen, there was no oxygen in the environment. Oxygen is actually a poisonous gas. We evolved to breathe oxygen, but the original life forms, the organic material that was on Earth before there was oxygen was poisonous to it. When oxygen started being put out in the atmosphere, it actually wiped out almost all of life on Earth, and we use it to breathe. So just because there's life, quote unquote, it isn't necessarily life for us or an atmosphere we can live in. We are having such a negative impact, such a detrimental impact, and it has to do with this statistic right here. This massive.
Can I respond to that statistic very quickly? There was very simple responses to that.
Sure.
There was probably a time when there were like 10 people, right? Okay.
That time when
there was let's imagine there was a time when there was one person, but it's a bit complicated. And then there was 2 people. When you moved from 1 to 2 people, you had like 100% increase, right? What you're showing are just relative numbers, but we should actually look at like how much space do human beings take on the planet? Like most of us live in cities, and cities only take 5% of the planet. Like there are endless amounts of empty space. So what you're talking about is just relative numbers. Like, okay, we got bigger, we got more bigger, but there's still lots of space on the planet. And actually, if we made better use of our resources, we could take care of like many, many more billions. And on top of that, a lot of people seem to not realize still that we are actually suffering from a depopulation. Most countries like Japan and so many countries are really concerned about the lack of population. So we did increase, that was the past, but now we're not having enough children. We're not replacing. There's only certain African countries that are having enough children. The rest of the world is in big trouble, and that's secular countries are concerned about. All these countries that you listed, Denmark, Sweden, whatever, they have some of the biggest problems in terms of population.
Yeah, and I would say that that's actually my view on that. I agree with that they are below replacement rate. The more secular countries do tend to be below replacement rate, and I think it's a more ethical place to be. I think that we're more educated, and we are looking at the actual statistics.
That's not the question. The question is,
It's relative, though, because there's a reason that people are having less children, because educated people are looking at these statistics that I'm showing you and saying the planet is in trouble. we don't need to be popping out all these kids. We are wiping this planet. The reason that we live on we've only inhabited a small amount of this planet is because only a small amount of this planet is actually inhabitable. Most of this planet is taken up by water, ocean water in particular. We can't live out on the ocean.
Like even the land mass is that's
Much of the land mass is uninhabitable. I travel all over the place, and there is so much open land in like around, like I say, I've driven from Seattle to San Diego, thousands of miles, right, traveled, and so much of that land there's nobody there, and you're like, why is nobody living out here in the middle that's just completely empty? And then you have all these people packed into these cities like LA and Sacramento and so on and so forth. Well, if you get out of your vehicle and start looking at the actual land, it's solid stone. The land is actually rock. It's sediment. There's no dirt. There's no soil. There's no water. There's no electricity. There's nothing to even run utilities out there would be so expensive. It's not even, people can't even do it. So there's a reason that people only live on a very small part of the planet, because only part of the planet is inhabitable. The other issue is they are cutting down trees. The deforestation, when we talk about the CO2 buildup and stuff, the trees are not absorbing the carbon dioxide that we're breathing out because there's less trees. We're taking way too many trees out of the way in order to make room for people to build farms and the factory farming process, which is extremely inhumane to the animals. I'm not a vegan by any stretch of the imagination, but the one thing I do agree with the vegans, factory farming is incredibly inhumane. It's also adds so much to the pollution levels, but we need the factory farms to feed all the meat to all the people.
Well, that's another thing that I'm going to come to in a bit, but that we don't actually need so much meat. There's an unhealthy approach to, but very briefly, I mean, I'm sure when you got out of the car, you didn't try to make a borehole, for example, and check to see if there's a water table underneath. There are many things you probably don't know about desertification, that it's human-made, and that in so many countries like China, they're turning deserts into green spots again. So try. I would say I'll be careful about making assumptions about how much of the earth is inhabitable, especially if we haven't lived there, traveled there. I think we should try to experience more of those areas, and just check up YouTube videos on how deserts are turning back into green areas all over the world. So yeah,
technology
CO2
definitely makes
CO2 is helping, by the way. Yeah,
there's definitely like desalination projects and stuff. I mean, technology does really help in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong there. I agree with you 100%. You know, advancements in technology, but unfortunately, human population is growing exponentially, and this planet,
no, it's not.
By the numbers, scientists agree, cannot sustain that many people. There's a reason that we are actually below replacement rate, and I think it has to do with evolution.
You just contradicted yourself. You know that, right?
What's the P not
We're
P?
growing exponentially and we're going through depopulation. Which one is it?
Yeah, exactly. We are the population has been growing exponentially. Here's the chart right
in
here.
The past,
and we know now that we are starting to go below replacement rate. Right. Yeah. So we're starting to see a shift. Right. And I don't agree with the antinatalist position. I don't think it's fundamentally unethical to have children. I think it's unethical to have children you cannot provide a good life for. And I think there's a distinct difference there. And I think people should be having children, but I think we should be having children below the population rate. I don't want to see people go extinct. I think human beings are part of the ecosystem, but human beings, in my opinion, need to start acting responsibly to be in balance with the ecosystem. Because to say that human beings are a virus, I've used that type of terminology with the vernacular before. It's more visceral, but I don't know how accurate that is. But I do think it's accurate. Is we're more like an invasive species. Right. We tend to just grow and grow and grow without keeping ourselves in check. We literally wipe out entire species go extinct because we're taking away their ecosystems. And I think that's because we're not living in balance. We tend to think this planet is for us, and instead of thinking that we're a part of something.
Can I ask a question about that? Just because when it becomes this kind of conversation, there's always, and I don't know, maybe it's the right approach, but this tendency of viewing humanity like an animal population and comparing it to other animal populations and stuff like that. But I don't know, when you deal with this issue on an independent or an individual level, which is where we live, none of us are in charge of the kind of, policies that would affect 7.8 billion people. It tends to be a different sort of conversation. You have your children, you raise them over years. It's a real huge pain. You die, and so there's all these things that you have to decide to do. So I wanted to ask you specifically, Mr. Ethics. You said, is it it's unethical to raise children you can't provide a good life for? How does I actually do want to genuinely, this is a sincere question. How does marriage factor into this conversation? Like, do you
Yeah,
think
no, that's really
people?
important. I think that's a huge part of it. Statistics show that children that are raised in a two-parent household are significantly more likely to be healthier in almost every measurable category. What happens though, where people start to twist that statistic around, it happened. Jill tried to do this in our debate. He tried to
Okay.
assert that it was the biological parents had to be a mother and a father. That's actually not true. It turns out it's two stable adults, mentally stable, physically stable, capable, and financially capable. And it could be two men, two women, a man and a woman, biological parents, adopted parents, transgender parents. None of that actually matters. All that matters is has to do with their physical capability, their mental and emotional state of being, and their financial capability. That's
Okay.
what allows them to raise good children.
Okay, can I ask you? So, now we're kind of running up against different definitions that we have, because marriage. There are two types of marriage, in my view. There's the state marriage, and then there's you know the more serious marriage, which is religious and spiritual, and that is a man and a wife. But that is separate from two adults raising children, because I agree with you. I mean, adults, um, should raise children. It could be two brothers raising, if his wife died, maybe a brother helps him raise his son, something like that, or something more creative in the modern world. That's that, but I think that's totally separate. I'm actually asking about marriage. Like, what do you think about should that state that, and I can use your definition of marriage is fine. Should that state be encouraged or ethically in order to have children living a good life, or do you not require that in order to raise children, like an orphan being raised by, you know, two monks or something? This happens all the time. Does that make sense? Do you understand my question?
I'm trying to follow what you're saying, because I felt it seemed like at first you were trying to separate two different categories of a religious type marriage or a biblical marriage versus just two people in general. My fundamental position is that it's more beneficial, statistically we see this in every measurable category, to have two healthy adults who are in a mutually beneficial relationship, mutually respectful, so on and so forth, with each other. They're raising children. That child is going to be much more likely to have a good life, to be provided with what they need. But it doesn't
So
matter.
they don't have to be married?
Don't have to be married, and don't have to be a man and a woman. They just have to be in a committed relationship. Married is is part of our social construct, right?
What about more than two? Is that
I don't know any statistic. That's a very interesting question, Nathaniel. That's a very interesting question. I don't know of any statistics on polygamous situations. I support personal autonomy as the fundamental, most important virtue of anything, that we must respect people's personal autonomy. So any consenting adults, in my worldview, if you want to call it a worldview, can get into whatever relationship they want, in my view. However, being a happily married man in a relationship, a monogamous relationship with my wife for over 30 years, because it takes so much I don't want to say sacrifice in a negative way, but when you build a partnership, a lifetime partnership with another person, you are just giving so much of yourself into that situation. I find it difficult. I know me personally, I would not be able to make that same commitment to multiple partners. Now, that might be my own weakness, but I pour so much of who I am into my wife, and she pours so much of who she is into me. I don't see how I would have enough left over to, one, take care of myself, and then pour more into another partner. I'm not saying it's immoral. I just don't see how it works practically.
I wasn't actually asking about polygamy, but yeah, anyways, I did want to know more about that. I don't know if I can kind of get to what I was asking about, which is actually marriage in of itself, because not all marriages produce children, and children generally are raised by, or they're influenced over the course of their childhood by many more people than just the two parents. Although the two parents are probably the most significant. So, but anyways, I did want to know though.
I would like to see all adults taking children more seriously. I would like to see all adults thinking of themselves in a global community, that my responsibility is to set a good example for your children and for Khalid's children. And if you are my neighbors, like, I look out for my neighbors' kids. They're not my kids, but I look out for them. If they're playing out in the street, I will go out there and do something about it. You know what I mean? Like, I genuinely, and I think we should all take children, like the Indians, the Native Americans used to have a saying that it takes a village to raise a squaw, right? And so they just kind of did this, where all of the females would take responsibility for all the children. And we see this in other animal species as well.
I want to.
You still see that in hot countries and Arab countries. You go to a park, it's normal for like some random kid or some other parent to watch out for your kids if they're about to have an accident or anything. It's just normal. We don't have those boundaries of separation.
I've got to go. Let me. I just want to give you a scenario, hopefully, to lend some clarity to that, especially when I publish this later for people.
Yeah, let me give you a chance. I always give somebody a final word on my show. So let me give you uninterrupted. Go ahead, and you've got the stage, brother. Tell people where to find you, what your projects are, whatever you want to say.
Oh, okay. Well, on the topic we were just talking about, the sort of scenario I was thinking about, because when we're talking about whether we should have more children, whether we should, which I don't think is different, the pro-life stance tends to kind of limit itself to conception or to birth, as far as birth. But I think it's much more than that. And the sort of scenario I was thinking about is like in the early church, Christians, for instance, the martyrs of Lyons, who were put in burning iron chairs and all kinds of crazy things. The slander that was said against them was that they were eating babies. And the reason that was said against them, hopefully I'm not mixing this up with a different group, is because infant exposure was a very common practice in the ancient world, where basically if you had a baby, you just leave it outside to die for various reasons. Some of them religious, some of them economic, I'm sure, and a lot of people who practiced that were probably cynical, and they didn't want the trouble of raising the children, and it was harder to prevent birth sometimes, and that kind of thing. So, but the Christians would go and rescue those children and raise them, and they weren't always raised in a two-parent household. The nuclear family is a pretty recent invention, all things considered. The Catholic world is known for like nuns running orphanages, like the popular kids book Madeline. It says, was it Miss Clavel? It's actually Sister Clavel. So I do think if we're going to talk about antinatalism, I think it would be a helpful conversation to separate those two things, that we have an obligation to children in general, and I think maybe that gets lost sometimes when you view humanity as this animal species that's just pumping out kids. All these animals, they abandon their young, or they try to eat their young or something like that. Well, I don't know a ton of biology, but I don't know, in my experience, I've raised animals. I've been a farmer, I've been a butcher, I've raised pigs, I've killed them, sheep. I don't know of any other animal that raises their children for even 12 years and has to carry them around in this kind of a way where babies are so vulnerable and stuff like that. So I think that's a much more interesting ethical conversation. And I think and a very important one. And I think if you're talking about happiness and stuff like that, well, living in a society that treats its babies that way or abandons them out in the woods, stuff like that, probably affects your happiness, because you realize, okay, you went through that process. I reflect all the time my chances of surviving abortion. I look around at my peers in my generation. I say, most people have been aborted not most, but a ton of people have been aborted. It was very unlikely. It was very likely that I could have been aborted, and I wasn't, So anyways, none of that has anything to do with anything, just where my mind's going. Thank you very much for having me. God bless you all. I am Roman Catholic. If you have any questions, I didn't mean to say this since I'm not sticking around, you can email me at taurusneckers@gmail.com. Happy to do that. And I think the one problem in the world is usury. I think usury is the root of the environmental issues through the industrial system. I do think we need to use the industrial system because we have it and its results really to fix that. And I think that the cause of unhappiness has a lot to do with usury as well. So God bless you. Thank you. Bye.
Well, it's always such a pleasure to be able to speak with you, Nathaniel. Despite our differences, let me get this off of here. Despite our differences in views on things, there's some common ground that we have, which has to do with respect, self-respect, or respecting each other. We're having a great conversation today. We're obviously coming from different views, and that's okay. We're going to put our own opinions and share our own information with the chat and the audience and people who watch the video, but it's up to them to do their research, right? Like, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a climatologist, I could be wrong. Wikipedia could be wrong. I think Wikipedia is a great source because it cites their source material, so I recommend it. Definitely, I'm a big fan of Wikipedia because, again, but you got to go in and do the actual research. You can't just stop there. But I admit, I always say fallibility is a virtue, that I almost certain I can't be certain about anything. So I'm definitely going to be wrong about a lot of things. And so double check the things that I'm telling you, double check what Nathaniel and Khalid are telling you. I'm sure they would encourage you to do that, but we're honest people. We're going to have an honest conversation and just see what bears out. So Khalid, did you feel like that was good for the environmental question, or did you want to have a final thought on that? And then we can move to the next one.
I was just a bit distracted because I could hear huge cheering outside, and it's the World Cup final. Something must have just happened, but that'll be interesting.
Probably the first score of the game. My understanding is it's been 0-0 for a couple hours.
Yeah, I'm really hoping Spain wins, but yeah, like most of the world actually. But that's a whole. I don't know if you've been following it, but yeah. So okay, environment. Yeah, I felt like there's only one thing that I remember that you said earlier on that may be worth coming back on. You said the secular countries intentionally have less children. So again, I'm gonna give a statistic, and people should check this for themselves, or even check this with their own experience. The number one reason why women don't have children is because they've been focusing on their careers. So it's accidental. They've been working on their careers, and saying maybe later. When they hit 40, it's too late. Even when you're 30, there's only a 50% chance you can have any children at all because your reproductive system has been dormant. Of course, if you've been having children since your 20s, then you can carry on having children into your 30s. But if you haven't had a child by 30, it's pretty hard. So in short, it's accidental, and people do want to have kids. It actually makes people pretty miserable in the long term if they don't. So I always recommend you having children as my brother. I really do, because I think you might regret it afterward, because we're social beings. Children are a special connection. And then at a sort of governmental level, these same countries that have low fertility rates or reproduction rates, like Denmark and Finland or Sweden. Sweden's a really interesting example. They literally give you 1.5 years paid leave from your work. You get 80% of your rate of your pay, and they're literally asking people to come into the country and have kids. Like my cousins from Pakistan are having kids in Sweden, right? And they're still not getting enough children. So I wouldn't say it's intentional. It's an urgent issue that they're actually trying to resolve, and they can't because of, I would say, religious issues, or I don't want to call it culture. I think it's religious, because Muslims in the same so-called secular countries are having most of the kids. So yeah, that's my.
I agree with you. I think religious people are definitely prone to having more children, and I think, I would agree with you on that. I think that when it comes to the infrastructures problem, I think the governments do also try to encourage people to have children, because infrastructure becomes a self-perpetuating problem. You need more healthy adults, middle-aged adults, to maintain the infrastructure, and you can't get middle-aged adults without having children. So the more children you have, then of course those middle-aged adults become old senior citizens who are no longer able to sustain the infrastructure. So the infrastructure has to be big enough to sustain the new children coming in, the current wave of adults, healthy middle-aged adults, and the senior citizens. So the infrastructure has to continue to grow with the population, and the population has to continue to grow to maintain the infrastructure. So it's a self-perpetuating wheel that just keeps turning and turning and turning. And we know that the governments are highly motivated to maintain those infrastructures because it's all about the money, right?
I mean, we naturally create things, so why wouldn't we create more infrastructure? It's not necessarily even a problem. It's actually a good problem. We love being creative. We love solving problems, and there's plenty of space on the planet to do that. I loved like reading the comments. Somebody said, "Are we having an ecological conversation or a socio-political one?" I think they're all connected. Like ecological issues we have are because of our mindset. It's like the way we even view ecological problems is about how we think is as what we've been taught. Like, oh, having more kids is a problem, for example. Some people might have been taught that, for example. So how we view it and and how we think affects everything we do. Like we just said, religious people have more kids. Why do they have more kids? It's not an accident. We've been taught that we should have more kids and that things take care of themselves, and they do, from my experience, right? So in many ways. So, and then there's even the whole religious people are not concerned too much that their kids have everything. In fact, there's studies coming out that you shouldn't give your kids too many things because it spoils and makes them weak. There was a study that I recently heard about, which was girls compare their future husbands, the level of wealth and provision with their fathers. So if their fathers, in short, give them loads of stuff, their future husbands will never be able to compete, which is like normal if you think about it. Like, say you're getting married, okay, and you've had a certain level of provision. You lived in £1 million house, but a new young man, he can't provide. He doesn't have £1 million or $1 million house or whatever. He doesn't have those things. He's a young man. He's starting from scratch, right? So, like, in short, there's more and more evidence to say that don't spoil your kids, which is kind of obvious as well. Don't spoil your kids. You don't need to give them too much. You need them to have some hunger. I'm a bit of a football fan, and one of the best, probably the best player in the world is Cristiano Ronaldo, right? And he always says that my son can't compete with me because I had nothing. I had that hunger to fight for success, and he's already got everything. It's harder for him in many ways. So hunger and not providing too much is actually a good thing. So those are just some thoughts, but you can respond to that, and then we can move on to the global warming thing, which we've touched on a little bit about CO2 levels things in a minute, if you like.
Yeah, we can just move right on. Do we even need to go to global warming? Didn't we just talk about that, or do you want to?
I'll talk about it very briefly because there's some things that we didn't talk about you might find really interesting. So global warming, is it bad, right? So you've got an idea from me that actually global warming is a good thing, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Start with a verse of the Quran. And he, that is God, created horses and mules and asses, kind of donkeys, that you may ride them as a source of beauty, and he will create what you do not yet know. So he's talking about different kinds of transport that we created in the future. So my point is, actually, I'll just read what I've written and see how much sense it makes. And by the way, when I've written this stuff, it's always been edited, and I love to get feedback if it makes sense or could be written in a better way. And I'm trying to make it as short as possible as well. Just as God taught the bees to construct their technologically amazing homes with the resources of the earth, so has God taught us how to transport ourselves using animals, from using animals to cars to other forms that we do not know. This is what the verse above points out. The verse of the Quran, I probably should have said. We found lots of oil at the same time the technology for car engines was learned. Nothing is by accident. Just like the harmony in the rest of nature must logically be orchestrated. Oil is recycled life, made from the remains of dinosaurs and prehistoric plants. By bringing oil up and putting it back into the atmosphere through exhausts of various transport, we are bringing CO2 levels back to what they were when it was warmer and there was a lot more life. This could be God's way of supporting more life by taking us out of a relative ice age. So we might be thinking, oh, it's got warmer, but it was colder before. It's all relative. So those are some of my thoughts. Maybe if I summarize it, it's something like, as I said in the earlier section, we're just part of all the many species that exist in life. Now, when we look at the honeybees, we don't, and they do have very high-tech homes, and their high-tech homes are made from the environment. Okay, we do the same thing, but when we look at honeybees, we don't look at the honeybees and say they just figured it all out themselves. We understand there's some sort of amazing harmony in nature. So we should see ourselves in the same way, that there is an amazing harmony in nature, that we are being taught how to make cars. At the same time, all the relative, or the not the relative, the relevant resources are given to us. So we're just like the bees. We create amazing things, and things are given to us, and it's all inspired by God at the right time. And it's not something we should be concerned about. All of this does seem to make sense. We look into history in our, if you look back to the times of the dinosaurs, as I said before, more life, more CO2, more warm. Well, and things are changing slowly. We might have a few heat waves, but we're like, the water levels are rising at 1 millimeter like per year or something. We've got time. We're smart enough to figure it out. And there's lots of land as well. So I wouldn't be concerned about anything. Just happy, in fact.
Just really quick, I'll just throw my hat in the ring really quick. And we already went through a bunch of statistics, and I encourage people to check out the links about CO2, global warming, population growth, climate change, and all that stuff. It's readily available on the internet. Do your research. What I would say is that, yes, life, quote unquote, does definitely evolve, and it adapts to the environment. The problem is environmental changes happen too quickly. Life cannot adapt quickly enough, and that's when we see these mass extinction events. The first organic life forms on the planet, cytobacteria, simple organic molecules and things of this nature, these have been on the planet for the longest, almost a billion years, right? And then we get down to the next dominant life form on Earth was like the trilobites. They were the apex species on the Earth, apex predators. They were that on the Earth for about several 100 million years. Then they went extinct. And then the next species was the dinosaurs, and they were the dominant species on the Earth for a few 100 million years. Then they went extinct. Now we are the dominant species on the planet, and we've only been around for a few 100,000 years. We're not going to make it to a few 100 million years. What you see historically, if you actually watch the trend, is that the dominant species gets wiped out sooner and sooner and sooner, and has a much shorter existence on the planet. And so the fact that we are causing our own demise with all of this pollution, adding to this rapid growth and climate change, we're going to be on this planet for a much shorter time. There's wars and things happening. AI is going to cause problems. There's so many things on the horizon that we're causing our own problem. There's something called the technological singularity. I encourage you guys to look into that. Will life evolve again? Absolutely. This planet's going to be here for another 4 to 5 billion years before the sun envelops it, right? So before it becomes uninhabitable. So 4 to 5 billion years is a very long time, and organic life will continue to evolve. That's why the antinatalist, ethicist position makes no sense fundamentally, because it's not just an appeal to nature when nature's a brute fact. You can wipe out all the life on the Earth and it will come back, because evolution is just going to continue to happen on any planet that's within a particular, they call it the Goldilocks zone. You need certain criteria. You need the base chemicals. You need liquid water. And that's about it. You need to be a certain distance within an energy source. And that's about it. We see down in the Mariana Trench, I was looking at this documentary. The plant life down there doesn't even evolve with photosynthesis. They use chemosynthesis, for example. So you don't even need the sunlight directly. So there's just, life is such an amazing thing. Evolution is so incredible. I understand the religious view that people think that God is doing all this. There's this, guy behind the curtain pulling all the levers, or whatever, however you want to put it. I don't see it that way. I see it as natural processes. But I think that it's undeniable that life will continue to evolve even after these mass extinction events. I just think that we're creating our own mass extinction event, and we're our own worst enemy because we act like an invasive species. We do not put ourselves in check. We do not live harmoniously within the ecosystem that we are a part of. We tend to think that this planet was created for us as opposed to us evolving into it. And I think that's really problematic. That would be my response to all that. Then did you want to go to the next question? I got people who want to join the conversation, but I want to make sure that people know I'm definitely going to share the link, but I'm going to wait till we get through these conversations, and Khalid and I will try to speed it up just a little bit.
Yeah, I'll try to speed it up.
Yeah, because we've already been at
quickly. I think we're going to religiously, based on my religious beliefs, we're going to, as human beings, we're going to survive another 7,000 years. Okay, whatever. Who cares, right? Like what? Why one number other than another? But anyway, question 3: greed. Are we consuming too much? This is coming back to a verse of the Quran that you like, that I mentioned earlier before. And as to those who disbelieve, their deeds are like a mirage in the desert. The thirsty one thinks it to be water until when he comes up to it, he finds it to be nothing. And he finds Allah near him, that is the name of God, who then fully pays him his account, and Allah is swift in reckoning. So God describes in this verse of the Quran the sad story of all of those who chase happiness through buying stuff. It is a never-ending chase like chasing a mirage. A mirage is a special kind of illusion that looks like water from far away, but the illusion disappears when you reach it. This is a perfect metaphor for the illusion of happiness through materialism. You think a certain material goal will finally satisfy you, but instead, when you achieve it, the emptiness of the goal will be your punishment. We overconsume because we are consumed by a never-ending thirst for buying things. The emptiness is the result of rejecting the spiritual dimensions of our lives that include non-physical things like connection, meaning, and peace. It is the remembrance of God that hearts can find comfort. Wow, something's happening outside. I can hear screaming. Celebrations. This is something you can test. Knowing God is at the heart of peace is also the solution to the endless addiction to material desire, also known as greed. So hopefully that made some sense. I'll try to summarize. It goes something like this. We are consumed by greed, and that's because we are missing something important in life. There's lots of great videos about how the lack of connection we have with other people make us depressed. I try to keep my book short, but Johan Hari's done a great book on something called Lost Connections, and he talks about how if you put a single rat in a tank and you give it the option of water or heroin to drink, it will go for the heroin and kill itself, right? But if it's surrounded by loads of other rats and they have as much sex as they want and everything they need, then they never go for the heroin, they go for the water. So in short, yeah, we are greedy because we're unhappy, and that can be resolved. And God is the fundamental connection that we need. And you can test that theory or that claim by simply contemplating on God, and you start finding peace in your life, or you start finding comfort somehow. And that's, again, based on many ideas of psychology called, I can't remember, somebody told me last time. But yeah, there are many aspects of psychology that kind of support this idea of connection to a higher power and things like that give you peace.
Yeah, this is going to be one of the points where you and I are going to find a lot of agreement, brother, because for one, I do think that's one of the most beautiful things I've seen in the Quran so far. I actually started reading the Quran, although I've been so busy with work changes and stuff like that I haven't done much of anything. I've only made it to the 5th surah, but it is a very interesting book. But that's definitely by far so far the most beautiful thing I've seen in it. And we talked before, and I referenced that conversation already earlier, so I won't waste too much or spend too much time on it. But I agree with 100%. I think that Nathaniel, if he was here, and I think I can speak on his behalf, usury is a big problem. Usury is a huge problem, and I think that it's unethical. I think it's led to a tremendous amount of harm, and I think that the economic systems global economics in particular are built to collapse, which is why we continuously see the crashing of the stock market, the housing market crash, the AI, all this. It's just a constant cycle, the Great Depression, so on and so forth. And so we definitely need to reassess how we're going to value people's time, especially with the advent and implementation of AI. Where it's going to, I saw a statistic that was just frightening the other day, that a corporate CEO was saying that one employee using AI can do the work of 50 employees. And he was talking about how wonderful that's going to be for production and everything else. And I'm reading that saying, okay, great. So 49 employees are out of work. That's great for corporations, but it's not great for the working class. And if you think about the fact that all of this is connected, the corporations are trying to sell a product or a service. But if the working class, if 49 of 50 people are out of work, they don't have money to buy those products and services. So what good does it do to be able to produce? You know what I mean? Like the whole thing is just so messed up. It's an upside down
pyramid. Have you ever
pyramid.
used AI? I think AI is pretty crap. I'm a programmer as well, besides a teacher, right? So I use AI to generate like simple questions for my students. It does it really well. It goes through like the specification for the course and produces pretty good questions and makes some mistakes. But anything like a bit too creative and complicated, like really complicated programming, it gets wrong most of the time. It gets simple code done easily for me. So it's overrated. But then you might question, like, why do these trillionaires or billionaires really want to create AI? I think it's to do more simple things like surveillance and to control population, probably, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time today. I mean, we can when they open up the panel. Definitely, I'm willing. It's a very interesting and I think a very important topic. In fact, this Wednesday, I'm doing a bonus episode. I'm having Dr. Richard Carrier and Dr. Perez, two PhD scholars that I've spoken to, both of them on my views of morality from a secular worldview, in particular objective morality, as I'm a moral realist. Dr. Richard Carrier has peer-reviewed work on that subject, and Dr. Perez does a lot of independent work independently as well. And I'm really pleased that I'm going to have both of them coming onto my channel Wednesday. The three of us are going to be talking specifically about AI and morality and ethics and how that all ties together. So please do stay tuned. You are tuned in for that show, everybody. It will not be an open panel like we do every Sunday, but I will take your questions from the chat. If you want to ask Dr. Carrier or Dr. Perez a specific question, or myself, of course. I'm just going to be the idiot in the room. Obviously, I'm not a PhD scholar, so I'm quite honored that both gentlemen would take time out of their busy schedules to speak to me. But yeah, anyway, so AI, very important. We need to have these conversations because it is the future, and we need to figure out how to implement this ethically. But we have a lot of common ground there. I think we should move on to the next question if you're satisfied with that.
Yeah, I'm going to go out of order just because you mentioned usury and so did Nathaniel. I'm going to talk about why that is a problem very briefly. That's number 6. And then I'll jump back to like technology and things. Okay, economics. Is capitalism designed to destroy the world? The Quran says, those who devour interest do not rise except as rises one whom Satan has smitten with insanity. That is because they say trade is also like interest, whereas Allah has made trade lawful and interest unlawful. Governments keep taking loans to pay for loans from the banks. And to pay back the loans, the government forces its citizens to work harder and produce more. This unnecessarily mines the earth for its resources. In this way, interest-based loans are designed to destroy the earth. Islam replace I'm not even sure the correct sentence is, but Islam replaces interest with investment. This involves the rich giving the poor money to improve themselves. Otherwise, the rich either waste the money on silly things like Lamborghinis, or they have to add, I know what it's supposed to say, or they basically buy all the houses, etc. So they buy all the assets in the world because they've got lots of spare money. Yeah, most people are living hand to mouth, so they don't have spare money to buy more things, buy houses, etc. But if you're a trillionaire like Elon Musk, you can't spend that money, so you can't really spend it on yourself. So you have to spend it on something else, and you basically end up buying all the assets in the world. That's why gold prices are going up, house prices are going up, despite people becoming poorer is because actually it's the rich buying everything. When I say the rich, I'm talking about the super rich, not the middle class who've got maybe £1 million. I'm talking about the multi-billionaires, right? So the prices go up and nobody else can buy the houses. And there's a great person called Gary Stevenson. He's not really an economist, he's a stockbroker. He talks about how the poor will own nothing, and I've given a link for that video. So to summarize, yes, there's this thing called interest. It's become normalized in our economies but in the past, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam forbade it because they considered it really dangerous. And now we're seeing how dangerous it is. This whole system, I've just given a tiny amount of the problems related to it. For example, it also is the only way wars can be paid for. There's so much damage this system does. And in short, what it's doing is making the rich richer and the poor poorer. And that's why you're seeing in real time in our lives how we have incredibly rich people like Elon Musk. Like, where are these trillionaires coming from? Do they really provide that much value? I don't think so, by the way. And then there's just more and more poor people. How is that happening? Because of the system. Yeah. And of course, it destroys the environment in the process. We need to keep producing to keep paying for these interest-based loans. Yeah.
Move on to the next question.
Cool. So the thing I skipped, or we kind of touched on a little bit, but I'll also be really quick about technology. Will it save us? I missed out. I missed out this essential connection one as well. I'll try to do that really quickly. Nature, our essential connections. This is a different aspect of, I'll just read it. From this earth we created you, and into it shall we cause you to return, and from it shall we bring you forth once more. Many of us living in cities will often forget how much we are part of nature. We come from it, so we must be part of it. It has also been shown that we need to see greenery for our mental health. Nature is one of the lost connections that Johann Hari has explained is making us depressed. Just as nature continually brings new life to the world, we should expect the same. This awakens us to the reality that our lives are far bigger and more meaningful than what we experience on this earth. So, in short, we shouldn't forget how much part of nature we are, how much, we need to see the greenery, for example. And also, we should not just see us, it's not just a connection to nature directly, but to see the process of nature. Like, nature is a story of cycles. It comes to life, it dies and regenerates, and so do we. We're going to die, and we think that's the end, but that's not the end. There's something bigger that our lives are made for. This like a never-ending life that continues from the death of this life, just like you have with everything else in nature. It dies and comes back to life. So that gives us some meaning that is really important to our mental health. That's the brief idea there. Maybe I've thrown in too many ideas in that one.
Well, this will be another point where we're going to have a lot of agreement, and I talk about this all the time on my planet. In fact, one of my infamous sayings that I try to repeat everywhere I go is that self-respect, mutual respect, and respect for the planet, these are the bricks that pave the road that leads us to the good life we all want to live. And I think that, respect for the planet is living in harmony with nature, that it's extremely important to consider ourselves as part of an ecosystem, as opposed to thinking of ourselves as being that this planet was created for us or designed for us or anything like that. I think that leads to very harmful behaviors. I think it leads to people denying climate change, denying ecoscience, and denying the problem that humans can be. I think that if we live in harmony with nature, we'll take more seriously the health of the planet, Also, nature entails our community as a social species. I think taking care of each other is actually part of the natural process, part of nature. So while you and I are going to come at it from different angles and have some differences in some of the specifics, like the climate change thing, for example, I think we're going to be in large agreement that we want to, for whatever our motivation or purpose is, we want to be living in harmony with nature. It's extremely important. I think that taking care of this planet, if people are going to have children, they owe it to their children to leave the planet in as good a position or better condition than it was when they were here. Just like anything else, if you want to give your children your house, you don't want to give your children a house that has a roof that needs to be repaired and has bad plumbing and bad wiring, right? Because you're not doing them any favors at that point. You want to give your children a house that's in good repair that will sustain them through the time when they might have children, right? So I think that considering ourselves as part of nature will lead us to live a more humble life, a more conservative life, where we're not just buying all these unnecessary products like what Nathaniel was talking about, the million per day of Pop-Tart boxes or whatever kind of crap that was. Those kind of statistics are staggering. They literally just, it's like somebody punched me in the face or something like that when I hear those kind of statistics. And that's just a drop in the bucket. How many millions of different cardboard boxes of useless products? Pop-Tarts are actually poison. Like, that's not even food. You know what I mean? Like, people are literally poisoning themselves. Corporations have invested so much money into marketing that's very, very manipulative, that taps into the human psychology and the human psyche. And they're convincing people that you're a good mother and you're a good father if you're buying Pop-Tarts for your children. You know what I mean? Like, you have happiness in your life if you got a box of corn pops up on top of your refrigerator or whatever, instead of like Raisin Bran or granola or something that's actually healthy for you. It just amazes me. And I think that that's just all goes against this idea of living in harmony with nature.
Cool. Yeah. I'm just looking back and forth. Somehow I think I might have repeated certain ideas. So there's the idea of technology is inspired by human beings. By God, and that is part of a wider plan. So like in this verse of the Quran, it talks about new forms of transport always being created for us, for example, cars. But I think I've kind of repeated the whole CO2 idea or something. So I'm just going to leave that and read that later on, rather than waste time on that one. But yeah, I can imagine that generally we shouldn't. I could imagine technology can solve problems that we haven't solved already. We keep doing that all the time. So, and God is, if we see ourselves as part of nature, like I keep pointing out the bees, and the bees have their inspired technologies that solve their problems, we're going to have inspired technologies that solve our problems, is my brief idea there. But yeah, I don't know if you want to respond to that, or maybe we've talked.
The only question I had, and I'm so sorry, one of my employees called me, and I've told them specifically, do not contact me on Sundays. Not to be mean to them, but that's one of my rules, because I do this and they know this is one of my obligations. And so I don't know what, I was distracted there. I apologize. I thought I heard you say that God created cars. Did I misunderstand that?
Yeah. So the verse of the Quran predicts new forms of transport. And then I tied it into the idea of, like, why do we think of when we create technology, we think it's uninspired, but when we look at nature, we don't think of the bees kind of figuring it all out themselves. We see them as part of nature, and somehow nature is inspired to do all these amazing things, creating things based on the resources that are there. Like, how is this? How would the bees know how to create their perfectly heated systems and all these other amazing systems to make their homes perfectly clean and whatever? Like, how would they know how to do that based on the resources? There's so much interlinking between the different elements of nature. How would they have done that? And they're just one species, right? So, and I said, in the same way, when we came across the concept of the combustion engine, which is fundamental to make a car, it was at that time that more oil, huge amounts of oil, was found. So there's so many things that happen all at the same time. So that's why I say that there are no accidents, and that yes, we were inspired by God to create cars. And I'm not the only person. There are many people like there's a great TED talk about how people have always been inspired in amazing ways that they can't understand to create all sorts of technologies and ideas. They don't know where the ideas come from. The lady who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, what's her name? I can't remember. She does a great TED talk reviewing loads of amazing ideas and where they come from, and people don't seem to really understand where they come from. Maybe I'll link that later on at some point.
On a side note, I've been meaning to look into what exactly a TED Talk is. Actually, a couple people now have mentioned this to me, but one person in particular said that I would be a really good guest on a TED Talk, and I wasn't sure if I should take that as a compliment or an insult. I don't even know what.
No, a TED Talk is like you talk for 20 minutes and you're an expert on something. You've done something cool, something interesting. Like you might have traveled the world and you did it in a certain way, like you didn't, without money or something. Or this TED Talk that I was talking about, she wrote a couple of books, and one of her books at that time became a really famous movie that everybody loves. And then she talked about inspiration and creativity and where it comes from and how it troubles people as well, because nowadays in the modern world, people think everything comes from them, and then when you put all that pressure on, like it comes from you make yourself, you put a huge amount of pressure on yourself. But in the past, the idea of like a genius, for example, was considered like a spirit in your walls that helped you, right? So people had a different relationship with their creativity in the past. They had less pressure because they didn't think it was all about them. So there are loads of interesting TED Talks. So I referenced another TED Talk, How to Buy Happiness. I'm thinking not in this, maybe in this one, maybe. But you literally can buy happiness if you spend it well, like by spending on other people. There's also, and they're based on psychological studies and facts and different things. Yeah. So not just random conversations.
Interesting. That is interesting, because I have been studying philosophy for less than a year now. I've been studying it a lot, but I certainly am not an expert. And I do life coaching, but I'm not a licensed therapist or anything like that. So I wouldn't consider myself an expert in that either. The only quote unquote expertise that I have, I don't think would be relative to any TED Talks, unless people want to learn how to, design a boat hull. Because I do have 2 patents and I'm a licensed boat manufacturer. I'm an expert in hydrodynamics and, design engineering. Technically, I have an expertise in that, but it doesn't sound like a TED Talk type of a thing. I don't know. Maybe they were just being sarcastic when they said that, but
you could maybe do a TED Talk on that. Like maybe like some people might be interested in your boat designs or whatever it was that you made.
Possibly. I'll have to look into it. I don't have time to really take on another project. I just thought it was funny. It kind of brought up because like somebody said, "Oh, you should definitely do some TED Talks," and I'm like, "What the hell? Who's Ted?" I don't know.
Anyway, I can't remember. It was
So you did answer my question. That's interesting perspective. I've never heard anybody phrase it in that way that you did. I mean, about God being the designer of the cars through us. Maybe, I guess, is ultimately what you're saying. I would say that one pushback, and then we can move on to the next question, is it seemed like you said that atheists, I'm assuming you mean skeptics, atheists and agnostics, don't think that our inventions and our designs are inspired, but I think they actually are. I think that's one of the things that we know what design looks like. Like I mentioned, as an expert in engineering, as a design engineer, I went through the process of designing an innovative new product, and I had to take it from concept to market. And there's so many steps that you go through. You have an initial phase where you have an idea, you mock up some rough draft material, maybe some early prototype phasing. Then you go back in and you really engineer and you work out all the kinks. Then you look at the manufacturing process and you work for what we call lean manufacturing to figure out how you can really cut costs with materials. You look at market demographics, and there's so much that goes into taking a new concept all the way to market. And there are really clear steps that are easily identifiable. And I don't see any of those steps in nature. Nature seems to be a natural, unguided process other than the laws of physics are fundamental. But when we look at designs, like my boat design, you could clearly see specific steps that I had to take along the way to go from what was started out as a drawing on a napkin. Literally, I was in a restaurant somewhere, and I just had this idea. I was having a conversation. It kind of struck me. And so I started doodling some things on a napkin. That's literally where it started. And now you see in my picture, I'm writing this innovative watercraft. There's so much that goes into that. That's clear demarcations and clear signs of an actual design. Whereas when you look at things like the human body, there's a statistic I ran into the other night. It blew me away. In America, one of the places where we have the most advanced technology, some of the best medical care available, our education potential is really high, although the average person tends to be uneducated, which is really unfortunate because we don't offer free education. Isn't that crazy? It's so wild. But anyway, in America, where we have all this stuff going for us, all these freedoms, that about 5,000 people on average die every year because they choke on their own food and saliva. And whereas our nearest relative down the evolutionary tree in the primates, chimpanzees and bonobos, their esophagus is set higher, right? And so they actually can swallow and breathe at the same time. Horses, for example, can drink water and breathe at the same time. And many animals can do this, but human beings cannot. It's a flaw in our design, but we evolved to be this way because that happened to be beneficial, because having our larynx and our esophagus drop down, it allows us to speak. So we can articulate vowels and things like that in such a diverse way. So that's why we have all these different languages and this ability to communicate in ways that other animals just don't have. It's not just about the prefrontal cortex that allows us to manipulate language. It actually has to do with our anatomy. So it serves an evolutionary purpose, which is why it stuck and why it lasted. But when you think about the flaw in the design, why is it that we die from eating our food that we need to survive because our esophagus is set down below our windpipe? It's so amazing, but that's not a good design, I would say, personally.
I would say a quick response is most of us don't die that way. Hopefully not. We're a bit
thank goodness. That's right.
yeah. But like,
could you imagine like half the people in the restaurant just keeling over at the table?
Most people would call that evolution, like survival the smartest. Like if you're all dying because you're choking on your food because you couldn't figure it out, maybe, I don't want to say you shouldn't survive, but anyway. So that's that. There's loads of things, loads of other examples, like chimpanzees or primates have better short-term memory than we do, and all sorts of things. There's lots of trade-offs, and we're not supposed to memorize lots of things in the short term, or we're supposed to cook our food, for example. Like other animals might not need to cook their food. We've developed for a higher level of civilization, so there's reasons that make sense, I would say, for those trade-offs in our abilities compared to other animals. So that would be my quick answer for that. I want to make my last point, quickly get through that. And somebody tell me what is happening in the football, because it's getting crazy outside, so much screaming. So something's happening. Okay, number 7, order. Is modernity ignorant of traditional balance with nature? Okay, so there's a verse of the Quran, and this is one of the many teachings in Islam about how to balance our natural abilities, and in this particular case, between men and women. Men are guardians over women because Allah has made some of them excel others, and because the men spend of their wealth, so virtuous women are those who are obedient. So there's I would say, a traditional role. Actually, I should just read what I've written very quickly. The West's idea of feminism is breaking the human tribe by causing us to die out and ruining relationships. The main reason why women do not have children is that they are prioritizing their careers, and this is making them miserable. It is also making men miserable because they are social beings as well. I think I miswrote that. And also, they also want to build a tribe around them. Women are not having enough babies to keep the world population going, and so they are dying out. When women left their place in the human tribe as housewives, they stopped cooking and food became industrialized. This made food toxic. Before women left their jobs as housewives, it was common to raise your own animals. Now, half of the antibiotics in the US are given to animals. Animals have become the main cause of land destruction. The increase in meat being eaten since the industrialization of food is far more than the increase in the human population, which is something you brought up. See TED Talk. So there's a TED Talk again, What's Wrong with What We Eat, which actually describes what happened since housewives stopped being housewives, women stopped being housewives. So see this TED Talk, What's Wrong with What We Eat, for more details about how being a housewife saves the environment. There are many other rules that Islam has for us that when we break them, we suffer. For example, Islam teaches us to avoid killing predators. Predators have small numbers compared to prey. So when wolves were killed in Yellowstone Park, it caused a huge upset in the ecosystem, leading to elk being overpopulated, vegetation being destroyed, and then the destruction of rivers and habitats for many animals. This was fixed when the wolves were reintroduced. I think there is a general arrogance in modernity to ignore how traditional ways of living have been successful in working with nature, is my main point. What do you think?
So I actually had to look this word up when you sent me those questions, because the way that you had put that all together, this is my own ignorance, and I apologize for my own lack of understanding. But the way I saw it, I will be bringing people up. I did pin the link, but we're just going to get through this last question, Chris. So I see you in the back room there, but like just a few minutes, so I'm not ignoring you. I do see you back there. Yeah, if anybody wants to join the backstage, I'll definitely be bringing you up. You should be able to hear the conversation while you're back there, is my understanding. So feel free to jump into the backstage if you're interested in talking about these questions that Khalid has brought to our attention. Really thank him for his hard work here and for sharing this material with us, because it inspires a lot of really great conversation. This has been very interesting talk. So regarding the modernity, I thought this is related to, traditional roles of women in the household, but it seems like you're covering actually quite a spectrum. It's a way of modern living. Is that what you're using it for? And just you're encompassing several different ideas, like you mentioned, the animal population, the factory farming, women in the household. So you're looking at just a number of criteria that factor into the modern way of living versus traditional ways of living. Am I understanding that correctly?
I'm saying, so the way I do try to throw in a couple of ideas together, so maybe it is confusing. The key word is order. There's an order in the universe or in nature, and in modernity, our modern ways of living, sometimes we're arrogant. We just think like, oh, we've got this idea called feminism, for example, and this idea is, and feminism is that women should be working in companies rather than working for their families, for example. So there's all these modern ideas, and we don't realize sometimes in our arrogance that this is a new idea, and maybe it's destructive more than we realize. So maybe we should be a bit more humble when promoting some of our new ideas, our modern ideas. And yeah, so there is a general order, and we should be careful of the order. Islam teaches different order in different parts of our lives. So, for example, I talked about relationship between men and women and the family construct, but also outside the family construct, like how to deal with animals. Don't kill certain animals, Islam teaches, and then we find out that there's a reason not to kill those animals that hunt other animals, because their numbers are very few, and it's key to protect them. So yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. Order is key, and modernity is destroying that order out of arrogance because we think we know so much.
Give me 1 second, just sending a quick note to Emily here.
Sure.
Person who over Dogma. She has a great channel. I encourage you to, in fact, I don't think I've done any shout outs. I've been trying to keep up with people joining the chat while I've been focusing on the conversation. If you guys watch my show even a little bit, you know I'm really bad at splitting my attention like that. And this has been such an interesting conversation with my brother Khalid and my brother Nathaniel, who was here earlier, that it's really taken a lot of my attention. And I hope I've said hello to everybody in the chat. I apologize if I missed anybody. There's some people who are really important that I really like to give shout outs to. Robin Webster being at the top of the list. She's a pillar in this community, and I always link her channel to every video I do. Please check out her channel. Personhood Over Dogma. She's fighting the good fight. I'm not going to get into the details today, but I would encourage you to look into her channel. We talked about the ECHO Act. I'm really a big supporter of that as it stands so far. And so I would encourage you to look into that. Emily's working very hard at making that happen. And there's other people I think who probably stopped by. Bionic Latino, Chris, my brother Chris, he's been a big supporter of this channel since day one. I know he's not here anymore. We said goodbye to him, but please check him out. Nels, I don't know if she's still here or not, but it was nice to see her. I can't think. There's been so many people who popped in and out. So do check out. I try to get the links in the description of the video, at least after it's posted. If I'm missing anybody, just let me know. Of course, I've got links to both the panel members who are my featured guests today, Khalid and Nathaniel. That's already in the description. The link to Khalid's book, which is what we're reading out of right now, the excerpts from his book for the material for today's show, that's been linked to the description as well. So trying to support everybody, and thank you everybody for stopping by here. Emily, would love to have you and Robin jump up onto this panel if you're able to, because I think that this is going to be, when it comes to women's roles in the household, I'd love to get some feedback from women, frankly. I have my own thoughts on this, of course, as a humanist, but you know, I think it really would be good to hear from women specifically. What do you think about this question? Because your thoughts are going to be the most relevant and the most important and carry the most weight, in my opinion, because you're the subject that matter here.
No, I'd love to hear. I mean, I spoke to Robin before. I had a great conversation with her. And
Robin's amazing. Robin's amazing. You should have seen her debate.
Sure
she had a debate the other day, not a formal debate, but an informal, just kind of a back and forth, where she was going up against two Christians at the same time, and she was cooking them. I mean, she was absolutely. I was really impressed. It's hard when you're debating more than one person, because I've been in rooms before where I've been debating like 5-6 Christians about the global flood myth, and they're all convinced that there was this global flood, you know, from the Bible and this and that. And so I'm getting 6 different arguments, and they're not coming from the same place. Some of them believe in the hydroplate theory. Some of them believe in different versions of were there mountains before the flood, or I'm just all these different crazy things and different arguments. And so it's really difficult to tackle every argument when they're so disconnected like that, you know. But Robin did a fantastic job. I was so impressed. So anyway, yeah, ladies, if you feel like joining, we'd love to have you up here. Anybody's welcome to join the conversation. Doesn't just have to be the women. I see Chris is in the backstage already. So I do have a real problem with what we call traditional roles. I don't see there being any such thing as roles, because my number one principle that I build everything up from is personal autonomy and equality. I believe every human being has a right to determine their own fate, their own path. I don't think that it's respectful or appropriate to tell women they should be in the home. They're just nothing more than baby factories and sex machines and cooks. I don't think that that's fair.
But you're making a lot of assumptions that those women don't want to do all those.
No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm not assuming that at all. Okay. I'm saying
if they're happy, and loads of people aren't.
I'm not. No, brother, you're misunderstanding me. I'm not making that claim. Okay. I'm not making that claim at all. I'm saying it's disrespectful to tell them that. I'm not saying it's disrespectful or they lack self-respect if they want to do that.
Is it disrespectful as a parent to say what you think works from your experience and your understanding of the world? Like, not telling them you have to, because in Islam we're giving freedom. There's literally part of the Quran says there's no compulsion in matters of religion. So there's no compulsion here. But is it good for parents to tell their children what they think works?
Well, I don't see. Because of autonomy, I think that parents have a right to raise their children to a certain degree how they feel is best. It's not for me to tell parents. Now that's
I'm talking about advice.
I don't think parents should be able to beat their children. I don't think it's ethical or fair to tell children that the earth is only 6,000 years old and they can't trust science. I personally think that's harmful to children, but I would never mandate laws against it, because I respect those parents' autonomy to be parents, right?
Yeah, but okay, let's say those parents have valid reasons. They can give they can give evidence. They can say, "Hey, these are all the evidence that I've demonstrated." You can check out the TED Talk. There's a history of why being a housewife is a really productive way, and so of living. Being part of the tribal system that we've had for centuries, and now we've got these modern ideas that say, for some reason, quite confidently, people are saying, you know what, being a housewife is rubbish. Like, you might not be saying that, but some people might say somehow it's better to work for a stranger, right? So I'm saying, I'm not sure about that. And there's some evidence to say that it's actually disrupted a lot of our traditional systems that worked. Like, we lived better with the environment before housewives were considered like a low job. Like, I think it's a really important job. There's so many other statistics outside the environment that I'm not talking about, because I'm just focusing on the environment at the moment. But like, kids are not taken care of as babies are not taken care of by strangers like they are taken care of by their mothers. There's no comparison. There's no statistics about that as well. They're not given, picked up enough, and that harms them psychologically. So there's so much more I could say about, the need for full-time mums. That's actually
Well,
really
just
important.
really quick, and I brought people on the stage a little bit earlier than I really should have, probably because I want to finish just getting through this. Give me just about 2 minutes to get through, or 3 minutes to get through with Khalid before we start interjecting. And I do want to get your guys' feedback. I do want to get engagement here, but I just want to make sure you guys didn't think you were being ignored. And I definitely want your feedback on this, in particular, Robin, when it comes to this idea of women in the household. But let me just keep
And
it
I
streamlined.
have a guest coming over, so I can't stay very long. So that's why.
Oh, okay. Then we'll get to you here right away. Okay, let me just wrap up. Okay, so there's other issues with the roles. I don't think it's a problem to let women make that decision for themselves. I'm all for it, because that is in line with my personal autonomy and my well-being, right? Women can choose whatever they want. There are women who definitely want to be mothers, and they want to be homemakers, so to speak, quote unquote, and that's perfectly fine for them. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. My issue is in telling women that's the role that you belong in, and the world was better when you were in the home. I don't think that's true whatsoever. I don't think you can show me one statistic that actually proves that that's true. Correlation is not causation. So we need to be very careful about making these general assumptions here. So I guess I'll just stop there. There's more I'd like to add to that, but Khalid, maybe throughout the conversation we can get to it. But I really want to hear from Robin, and then we've got Chris and Joel. And it's so nice to see you guys here. Joel, this is your first time on my panel, I think, and I'm just so glad to have you here. Joel's such a friend and a brother that I met many months ago, and this is really such an honor to have you join us today for the first time. I'm glad to have you here. But let's have Robin give her feedback on this conversation so far.
And thank you, because like I said, I've got a guest coming over, and so I won't be able to do the panel thing once they get here. But hello, Khalid. How are you?
Hi, Robin. Good to hear from you again.
Yeah, you too. Okay, I want to clear up something. One thing I think that maybe a lot of people miss out on is the word feminism. Like, I understand that there are like any other group, there are like radical people who have changed the definitions of words and stuff. But feminism, as I'm a feminist, and as I see feminism, is the belief. It is not about degrading men. It is the belief that women deserve the equal opportunity to live their life as they want, as they. So, like, I think that a true feminist would never insult a housewife for being a housewife, as long as that is her choice. I fully respect a woman who stays at home, raises children, and takes care of her home and stuff. Like, if that is what she chooses to do, I think that is an honorable decision, and I think that I do think that in a lot of ways that it probably benefits her children. Unfortunately, in I can only speak for the United States. unfortunately, in the United States, our economic system is set up to where it's almost impossible to raise a family, especially if you are someone who has more than one child on a single income. Um, you will live in poverty unless the man just makes some kind, has some sort of job where he makes a really 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 good rate of pay. But like most of just regular jobs that people do can get, and are you cannot live on one salary. um and so like but I don't so I think feminism gets blurred a lot, and I realize there are feminists who are claim to be feminists who don't hold to this kind of ideal, and I think that they are the ones that are harming the ideal of that movement. So, um, because I think it's all about the choice. That's to me, that's the only thing that matters is the choice.
I agree.
Okay, I wanted to say okay, like long before we set up our civilizations in the way that we have them now, women were not necessarily housewives. Like that's not always been our the way our civilizations were set up. Hunter gatherer, civilizations, which were like a huge portion of Homo sapiens, like civilizations for thousands and thousands of years before we set up farming and began like a more system like that right there. Women had various roles, like they were hunters and things like that. So I don't think
Women were hunters in the hunter-gathering scenario, do you think?
women. Oh yeah, women, and I don't think that.
I don't know how much evidence there is for that, but like,
There's a
I
lot
don't
of
think that's-
evidence. There's a lot of evidence for it, Khalid. There's a lot of evidence.
Sure, I'll check it out.
So anyway, so like this system that we have where the man is the breadwinner and the woman is the housewife, this is not in any way something that is historical beyond like the last several thousand years. I think that Homo sapiens have been around at least 250,000 years, and then we have all of our other different species that preceded us that I would call humans too. So.
But I just want to check what you're saying, because you said it's not the general pattern or something like that. You said, so you saying it was like 50% of the time women were the hunters and men were the gatherers, and they got the berries, and the women chased the animals and killed them and stuff like that. 50% of the time.
I mean, I'm not saying that they see you're thinking of these roles as set up as the same as what we're seeing them now, and that was not the way that there was just not those type of roles. I mean, like everybody did whatever needed to be done. So like there wasn't this the women do this and the men do this thing necessarily. That's looking at it from our perspective of what our civilizations are now, instead of going back into what they did. But like and I don't think that I don't think that the another thing that you said, I don't think that the human population on the planet is actually in danger of going extinct. I think that we are at over 8 billion now, and we seem to be heading probably to at least around 9 here pretty quick. So I think that we live on a finite planet, and so the thought that we can have infinite resources from a finite planet is somewhat
do you know that governments are like really panicking and they're trying to
yes, and I understand why they're panicking, not because they think that Homo sapiens are going to go extinct. It's because
I don't think they're actually going to go extinct, but we do have a problem. Yeah.
Well, our capitalist economies, especially in the United States, are set up on the ideal that the economy has to have a constant amount of growth. Okay, and the only way for that growth to happen is to increase production of stuff. So, like when you conflate what governments are using to be concerned about the GDP of their society and the actual extinction of Homo sapiens, I think that's a mistake. Like I don't, do you understand what I'm saying?
That's an interesting point you make. So we shouldn't just trust that the government want more people because
They don't think that we're going extinct. Like governments are not
No.
even saying that. They are like the United States is concerned about the GDP of their civilization, and then
But it's not the GDP. I do agree that the GDP shouldn't just have to grow. That was my point about interest is artificially forcing us to create more and more and more to keep GDP. GDP has to keep growing to keep up interest payments, actually. But there is another problem. Forget GDP for a minute. Do you know, when you have we call it pensions in England, like money you save up for
Yes.
when you're old. So that doesn't actually keep you alive. It's actually what really keeps you alive is the tax of the younger people underneath you.
Yes.
So we don't have a system to fix that. Like some people say robots will take care of that, but robots are not that smart yet. Right.
Yes.
So we don't have a system to keep us alive other than more young people.
Yes, Social Security, but you are actually reverting back to the argument that I was trying to separate from the actual extinction of Homo sapiens. You see that?
Yeah, I actually don't think we're going to actually die out. We'll probably fix the problem, but we are going in that direction.
Well, I mean, actually, our population is increasing. Our number of people is increasing. Our ability to replace workers is decreasing.
I mean, I would say,
do you understand?
I would let people research fertility rates for different countries to make their own decision on that. But I would say, there's only one area of the world where it's increasing, which is parts of Africa.
I mean, I don't think we need to keep increasing the population, though. I think we live on a finite
but you just
planet.
said it's not increasing, or it is. You said it is increasing.
Those numbers statistically, if I may interject, those numbers statistically. So the reason the population is still growing is because people are living longer. The replacement rate is dropping in many places, but we're still having children, and the replacement rate hasn't dropped so much. It's barely below actual replacement rate. It's like a 2.04, I think, global average or something like that. And they'd say the replacement rate should be around 2.14 to 2.33. So it's not like a significant drop, but it's just what they consider to be slightly below actual replacement rate. But because people are living longer, the population is still growing overall.
Yes. And there's nothing like, there is a certain, like, if we go back in, like, there is a certain amount of the population that we actually need for genetic diversity and everything. So, like, we had a bottleneck at one time back in our history. We can tell through our genetics and everything that where our numbers did get down to, some people say like a couple 100,000, like individuals. I'm not sure exactly what the number was, but that was very low because that was almost enough to that could have caused us to go extinct. But like, I think when we're talking about billions of people, I don't think that like we're anywhere near any kind of rate of extinction to where like we, and like our, see, if you look at like what the population of the earth was in like 1979 or 75 or something like that, and look at it now and see how much like growth we are, like how it's growing, because we have eliminated the we used to have like pandemics or whatever, or famine, that would strike, like the Black Plague wiped out like a third of Europe, or something like that. We don't, we have vaccinations for things like that now. So we don't have those same concerns. Actually.
Would you say 1 billion people was too many people for planet Earth? Like we're on kind of
No,
like
I think we could handle 1 billion. I mean, I think we
But
could
how do
probably
you know?
handle, we could probably
Like
deal with
these are,
the 8 billion.
I'm just
that we
saying these
have
are just
now.
numbers. Do you get what I'm saying? These are just numbers. Like we're feeling, oh no,
Well, I
7
know,
billion. Oh no. Do you know
but
what I
let's
mean?
not.
And
I mean, I just
also,
don't want to act like that
yeah.
we're going to go extinct when we have almost 9 billion.
Oh yeah, I've
people
already
on the
said
planet.
probably
Because
not.
we're
I don't think we'll go extinct. We'll probably
No.
figure it out. But like, yeah, the population. I checked it with AI. Yeah, the population is still increasing, but it's significantly slowing. So it
It
kind of
doesn't
on a
have to
curve going
increase.
You
down.
just got. You have to take account that we're basically in the post baby boom. By the way, so it's not like a catastrophic deficit. Sorry if I'm cutting you.
No,
Uh,
Cool.
I just want to add one more point, and then I was going to have to get off here. Okay.
Yeah.
And then y'all, and I just want to say, like, we were talking about. I think that Khalid, like, I'm an atheist, so I think that we were talking about like the carnivore and stuff like that a while ago. Yeah, that was irresponsible of people to make changes in a like in the natural environment, because I think that um, evolution has filled the niches that needed to be filled by adding carnivores. I would just like to say that I think that a God could have made a better plan than having had to have things eat other things to live. We could be like plants, and we could have photosynthesis and never have to kill other living out things. So I have a lot of that's one of the things that like makes me not believe in God, is the fact that there is unnecessary suffering, even if you don't even count the things that happen in the human world, that they can attribute to free will. I think that there is unnecessary suffering that exists on the planet that just didn't have to be here. And an all-loving God, a God that loved its creations, would not have set it up that way. But that's just my opinion. But anyway, you can address this, and I'll be listening. But my guest is here, and so I'm going to have to get down. But I will be listening to your answer.
Robin, thank you so much, sister, for stopping by, and thank you for all your support to the channel. And I want to go to Emily next. Just a little out of order. I'm sorry, Chris. I know you were here technically first, but I want to go to my sister Emily, and I think it's really important to get women's feedback on this. And before I
no
go to
problem.
Emily, let me just really quickly just to back up what Robin was saying, and I've got three sources. Two of them are extremely credible: the Smithsonian Magazine and the archaeologist. The archaeologist in particular does peer-reviewed work, and the Smithsonian Magazine oftentimes cites peer-reviewed work. And then this is globe.com. I don't know much about that resource, but women as hunters in ancient human societies. Research challenges the long-held belief that prehistoric women were only gatherers while men were the sole hunters. Studies of both modern foraging societies and ancient archaeological evidence suggest that women participated in hunting as actively as men in many early human communities. A 2023 study of 63 foraging societies found that in 50 of them, about 79%, women hunted, often purposefully rather than opportunistically. Women used a variety of weapons, hunted small and large game, and sometimes hunted alone, with men or in groups. In societies where hunting was the main subsistence activity, women hunted 100% of the time. I could go on and on, but I want to get to Emily. But there are actually studies that have been done that do back up what Robin was saying when she talked about ancient hominids, as well as our earliest humans and earliest cultures and societies, or not societies at that point. But so this idea
you could easily counter that.
What's that, brother?
You could easily counter that. I want to give Emily a chance, but if you look at, like, if there's a reason why men and women don't compete in the Olympics, because there's so many physical differences, and physical differences matter when you're hunting. That'll be my quick response.
Yeah, but that would be a completely different argument, because women did in fact hunt. We have evidence of that fact, and these studies do cite the actual evidence. So we can say that men are more athletic, but there's so much that goes into that. But it's not to say that there can't be great women athletes. So I coach sports all the time. I teach self-defense as well. And I know some black belts, some women that have black belts that would knock the snot out of most men that you know. Maybe most of the men on the channel, frankly. Yeah. So women are very, very capable athletes. Now, there is a reason we do separate the sexes. I agree with you, because on average, men are typically going to be stronger, faster, jump higher. But because of the bone density and lung capacity and heart size, there are some genetic factors that lead into that. But hunting is a skill. It's not about physical strength. It's a skill like many other things. And so I think there's a lot that goes into that. But the studies are out there. I encourage people to look at it. But what Robin said is technically backed up by science. So Emily, you've got the floor, and I'll shut up now.
No worries. And I didn't hear the earlier part of the broadcast except a tiny bit, so I'll go back and listen. Appreciate you asking me to come up. Love your show, and you usually have, really thoughtful, insightful, and well versed in what they're talking about guests. So I'm sure this is the case here. And I differ with Robin a little bit. I probably swag a little bit more conservative on some of these issues, though not by any means far right. I'm more of an independent thinker. But with a Christian background, sometimes I wonder if, cultural conformity is what shapes thoughts sometimes more than, is this what you really think? And how much of a, historical knowledge do I have? I've had to do my own deep diving due to my education being, a certain way. So for me, learning about like the Nair Carnivati, for example, where the women were in control of the property and the lineage control even, and where, the Minoan priestesses who were queens and were in control of like religious rituals, and they had administrative power, things like that. We didn't discuss societies like that growing up in Christian schools. So I wasn't aware of that. In fact, that would be considered sacrilege, that a woman would be in control of anything religious or anything administrative, or the money or the lineage control, especially. So there are societies like this, not as much European. So that's just another issue, obviously. But we do have, like in the Basque Country, there was this term, I don't know how to say it exactly, but it's et secocandre, like woman of the house, and they were the cultural anchor. They controlled all the household rituals, inheritance decisions, property continuity. So, and the surnames were also maternal. So, different societies set things up different ways. And obviously men are more physically strong. They have certain mental skill sets, and women have certain mental skill sets where we tend to veer towards certain strengths and weaknesses. And I don't have a problem recognizing that. But I feel like in modern society, we're all being abused. And this is a corporatocracy. So men go to work 60 hours a week. And, obviously that woman, why isn't she happy just to be at home, cleaning the house and being, chained to the stove and there for recreational activities when the husband is ready? That's what people started resenting each other for. These weren't things people decided. People didn't used to live this way. Men are miserable and women are miserable in those kind of situations. And I think that's what set the whole thing up of having this war. And it's very sick. And you can see the results are a very sick society. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Could I just ask which war you're talking about? Like a war between men and women sort of thing?
Yes, turning it into a war. Well, there's, obviously 70s feminism, which was a backed up by, media moguls thing. And then you have MGTOW, which is a backed up by media moguls thing. So these sick extremes in thinking are the result of the corporatocracy, in my opinion.
Should I respond? I don't know if I should respond.
Sure.
Or...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. I think I kind of agree with a lot of what you're saying. I'm not sure. Have you give me a question, maybe because I wasn't sure. Like I kind of agree with that.
I just kind of, because I didn't hear you guys speaking before, that's kind of, I think that is a place where even people that, swing extreme conservative or extreme left can see how we have been worked on in ways where we are not our authentic selves, and we would naturally flow and interact way better if not interfered with.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'll just say that, yeah, there might have been, you mentioned there were some societies where women had more control or something like that. So I'll just go like, I'm a big believer in nature. So where generally nature says like women are weaker, but like more caring and all these other things, like, why don't we let people specialize in what they want to specialize in? And I should point out that besides Islam being the fastest growing religion in the West, for reasons that I think these traditional values that Islam promotes are actually popular and people do feel in line with them, it's actually mostly women that are converting to Islam. So a lot of women actually do like traditional values. So I think it's good to bear in mind that actually a lot of women do like going back to these traditional values. And there's loads of good reasons for that, because women are really nice, for example, compared to men. And so they get pushed around statistically more in these nasty workplaces. Whereas if you're working for your husband or your family, you're working for people who love you. So it's a completely different scenario. So I think a lot of women are going back to traditional values, because traditional values are just nicer for everybody. That's how I see it. And I think the statistics of most women converting to Islam kind of demonstrates that maybe that's just the better way.
Well, I don't want to live in a theocracy, and the reason we have a tiered system in America and a constitution and a Bill of Rights is because men are not always honorable, and as the same thing goes for women. So in our country, we protect even a child against a mother or a father who might be harming them, because we believe God gave each individual rights by way of nature. So I do think that's very important. And if people want to convert to Islam, that's on them. That's fine, but I would never want Sharia law to rule in this country.
That's everybody's choice. Like Sharia law can't be. By the way, Sharia, it's really good that the word's getting around, but I think people don't understand what it is. Like part of Sharia law is to love your mum more than your father, for example. Part of Sharia law is to smile. So I'm not. There could be some sort of misunderstanding what Sharia law is.
Oh, nobody would have any problem with laws about smiling, although I actually don't think you could legislate a smile. But
yeah. So actually, Sharia,
some of the other stuff's
I don't think there's a thing called Sharia law in Islam. It's just like a popularized phrase. It's like Sharia is just means the way of like guidance or something. So every like Christianity has its Sharia, it's teachings, for example. Judaism has its teachings, and it can't be imposed unless like the population chooses like, oh, we really like these ideas or laws. And yeah, you can't impose people smiling at each other. Kind of defeats the purpose. Yeah.
Well, with the theocracy also, there would be extreme versions, and we've seen it in parts of Africa of Christianity, where they want to go back to the OT and stone people, and you have to have 3 witnesses or something like that to prove whether or not you were raped or not. And so that's also in the West considered a ridiculous step backwards.
Cool. Yeah. So, yeah.
Emily, I appreciate you sharing as always. I'm so glad to have you here. I think this might be your first time on an open panel. I know that you were a guest. We had a wonderful conversation about Echo, and I was so glad to have you on the channel and featured you there. But I think this might be the first time you joined one of our open panels. So it's so nice to have your input. I find you to be extremely intelligent, young lady. You're very well articulated, and yeah, absolutely. And oh, I'm a very intelligent young lady. Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
the lady part. Cut the lady part off. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Chris, I believe you were here next, so you've got the floor. Thank you for your patience, brother. I really appreciate you for that.
That's okay. Just wanted to straighten out the record about taxes in Islam, or anyhow, Islam society. There's the basically the Zarqa and the Jizya. Sorry for the
Jizya and Zakat. Yeah, that's right.
The Ursur and the Dirba. So when people either I say they, but it's just when the claim is that there's no taxes in Islam by people on the inside, that's false, and that is basically just a smokescreen to say, "Oh, we're better than you," in a way. Because speaking of the Jizya, it's basically the tax for non-Muslims, or even people would basically be. At least Muslims would be irritated by this kafir, because technically the non-believers.
I'll just translate because some people might not know the words you're using because you're obviously quite educated on a lot of things. So kafir means disbeliever, but I didn't understand like the context, like why you mentioned that word.
Well, I mentioned that word because I am taking ownership of it because that's what I am. I am not a Muslim, so I take full ownership of the word. And if you don't like it, that's fine.
No, I didn't like it. It's just that I didn't understand like the sentence or the point you were making. But I'll listen a bit more carefully.
Basically, I'm actually I'm kind of well. It's more of more. I got a sheet that's is going on for all that stuff, and then there's basically like the state tax with is the dariba, and then there's basically
like
the agricultural one, which is the ushur, and it's just you just put a hierarchical tax upon, like historically, there's been a hierarchical tax upon all of those things. So I just want to let people know that it's like it's a hierarchical system, like everything else. It's not. It maybe not look like. It may not look like capitalism, but it's the same thing as if you were in like communist Russia, or even way before that, feudalism. So I'm just saying. So yeah.
Okay, so just to summarize what you're saying, I think you were saying 2 points: that there's different taxation systems for Muslims and non-Muslims, and also that.
And then there's basically the agricultural tax, and then there's basically like what's called the zakat, which is basically like the religious tax for the wealth. It's a religious tax. Yeah. It's a religious tax disguised as a welfare tax, apparently for the needy. But I don't really care that much. It's the same to me. It's the same thing. It's just feudalism disguised.
Explain some of those terms because they're really interesting terms that a lot of non-Muslims are trying to promote. Actually. So I mentioned earlier in this stream that there's a guy called, I think, Gary Stevenson. He's a British, not economist, but like a trader, and he's saying that the super rich are buying everything, and he's trying to promote a wealth tax. So wealth tax is not normal, like a normal tax. So like anybody, if you're really poor, you don't have spare money, right? So you don't have to pay any tax. That's Islam. Islam says only the rich should pay tax. People who've got spare money that they haven't used for 1 year. And it's a small amount, like only 2.5%. And then the people who are not Muslims, they have to pay even less tax. And they don't
they have to pay more.
Country.
Historically, they have to pay more.
No, it's less. Jizya, you can debate this, but everybody can research it for themselves. So jizya is a non-Muslim tax, and they have to pay less tax. And even some like churches and monasteries or people who, monks, and they don't have to pay any tax at all. So you can research that as well. So the reason why they have less tax or less expectations is because in a Muslim country, we have... you can only really tell Muslims that you should do this and you should give this much charity, and we don't feel like it's right to push our religious belief of giving lots of charity and giving more money on people who don't share our faith. So we don't expect so
well,
much.
With all due respect, I think you're kind of sugarcoating this with rose-tinted glasses, but that's just me.
Sure. I mean, people could check the facts themselves, yeah.
Do you want to move on to...
but that was really interesting, though. It's relevant to the whole taxation system. I think people should check up zakat. Zakat is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and basically it's a tax on wealth only, so not like your income. So basically poor people would never pay it. It's unused money for a year, and it's for the government to serve the needs of the poor and just the basic needs of, Any
Do you want
other
to?
questions?
Yeah. Do you want to move to Andy? I think you were next in line. Thank you, Chris.
Hello. I don't know if I really have anything to say. I came up because he said you wanted to speak to me.
Yeah, I do want to talk to you. I've got a lot of questions about the Jack situation. I'm not criticizing at all because I have my own criticisms of how that whole thing goes. And I just kind of wanted to pick your brain because my understanding is you've been part of that community for a lot longer than I have. I just ran into him, or became aware of him, I should say, maybe a month ago, tops. Like it's been, 3 to 5 weeks or something like that. And I just see us, and I don't want to derail the conversation right now with that, but I don't know how long you can stick around or whatever, how long Khalid's got. But yeah, I did want to kind of just ask you about some of the history with that. And I had some other questions about all that, if you feel comfortable talking about it. But also, as you know, you've been a featured guest on my channel, and I've spoken very highly of you to the people who watch my channel. I think that you are extremely intelligent when it comes to ancient history, ancient Near East history in particular, one of my favorite subject matters. And I just love talking about that. And I just think that you have so much to offer that conversation. Biblical history, I think you do a fantastic job with that. I was watching your video, parts of your video. I could only watch a few minutes of it because it's so frustrating watching Zill just hand wave away all the evidence about Isaiah 53. That is so ridiculous. And you did such a great job. I've articulated it to him myself. I've seen you do it at least twice. I saw B.S. Lewis get involved, and he just continues to just literally just hand wave away all the evidence and reassert nonsensical talking points. And I just thought, oh my God, this is just so pathetic. But anyway, so yeah, you're always welcome here. If you want to participate in this conversation or catch up with me another time, however you want, you're welcome to stick around. Maybe we can get into some of that stuff after everybody else goes, or whatever, however you feel like doing it. Dark Light, you, I don't know. Are you still there, brother? Yeah, he's alive. Very good. You're up. You've got the microphone, family. And speaking of Dark Light, everybody, this is going to be my guest next week on Sunday. I'm really looking forward to that show. I've got to get a thumbnail set up, and I'll get you an email. I'll email you a link so that you can join the studio, a private link for you. And I'm really looking forward to that show. It's going to be a good one. So yeah, feel free to engage with Khalid, please.
Yeah, I've seen you on Daniel's channel a few times, Khalid, and every other time I wasn't able to make it on to talk to you, and I was wanting to talk to you. I do like how you present yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, you present yourself very well. And actually, when I first came on to this live stream today, I was actually agreeing with you on some of the points that you were bringing up, over some of the points that Daniel was bringing up. So we definitely have some alignments on some things, and I forget what exactly the exact points were, because that was like an hour ago or something, and I've been kind of bouncing around doing stuff, working on my book and shit. But so about me, I'm a non-Abrahamic true monotheist. To me, followers of Abraham are a blood cult of sin worshippers, and Yahweh, Jesus, and Allah are desert war gods of hypocrisy, not the actual one true creator. And I was called on by the actual one true creator to defy the broken theology of Abraham everywhere that I encounter it. And that being said, there are some parallels between what I believe and followers of Abraham, but there's also some obvious divergences. So for one, I believe that every word and every name ever spoken is the name and word of the actual one true creator. I believe that every single person alive is a prophet, and they are made a prophet because we are all in direct communion with the actual one true creator through our divine sovereignty, which is our inseparable connection to the actual one true creator. I'm just telling you a little bit about my theology right quick. I'm actually writing a book describing in deep detail my theology I've created. So non-Abrahamic true monotheist is just kind of like a generic, kind of like an overview. So that's a little bit about me. But I mean, I've had a hard time trying to get a hold of any Muslims to talk to them. And like I said, I do like the way you present yourself.
I'd love
I don't
to have you on my channel, by the way. Anytime.
I didn't know you had a channel.
Yeah, it's called Helpful Ahmadi. If you put it, can you see like underneath me?
Yeah.
that if you take away the space, that's my thing. And then
I've
the
got a
bracket
link.
stuff
I've
is
got it linked
yeah.
in the description of this video, Darklight. So you can just go to the description of the video, just grab the link right there.
All right, cool. Yeah, and I'm totally down with that. We can set up a time so I can come on your channel. My channel got shut down a handful of months ago. Sometimes when you're too awesome on YouTube, they just shut your ass down. So that's like a basic introduction of me. I forget what exactly I was agreeing with you about, because I don't agree with everything with everyone. Like I'm very divergent, and I'm used to that. I don't require people's agreements with me, but I do prefer civil discussion. I believe in discussion over debate, because essentially when it comes down to it, debate requires for absolute truth and absolute reality, and that's something I don't believe in, which is one of my big disagreements with most people, because most people do believe in absolute truth and absolute reality, absolute morality, all that, which is one of my disagreements with Daniel, because his name is objective ethics, and I believe I'm a extreme subjectivist. I believe everything is subjective. So that's just a little bit about me, and I was coming in very respectful to you, because you have always been respectful to other people. I can get sideways with followers of Abraham, but that is usually a reaction to them coming at me sideways to begin with. So I was raised mostly around Christianity. That is what I am most familiar with. Although I have tried in the last 2 years, I've been deeply studying Islam and Judaism just to know more about them. And I'm absolutely interested in learning more about them. Now, if I had to pick one between the three, I would pick Judaism as the religion that is closest to the actual one true creator. Even they're closest, but they're still far away. There's a lot of things about Judaism I don't like, but if I had to pick one out of the three, I would have to pick Judaism. So that's a little bit about me. Is there any questions?
I have one actually. Do you consider yourself to be an idealist or non-dualist or a oneness or a monist?
So I have coined a phrase called unified duality. I don't quite identify as any one of those, although I am paralleled to some of them, but I don't quite fit neatly in any one of those categories. The theology that I'm building, I am calling it a naturalistic omni-relational monism, which I'm proposing in both a theology for theists and as a theory for atheists and empiricists. And those are 2 volumes out of the 3-volume book that I'm writing. Each volume is going to be about 1,000 pages.
And are you getting monism from Spinoza?
Is that where the term originated?
First person I know of.
Yeah. So in my book, I do compare my proposed theology to all the different philosophies and theologies out there. I haven't quite got to that yet in writing it. But yeah, I do have a lot of parallels with idealism, with Spinoza, with what is it? Panpsychism. I have parallels, but I am not quite all the way there, because within my perception, the most fundamental trait is unity, and all those other philosophies, most of them say that the most fundamental trait is consciousness. But if you put consciousness first, that's putting the cart before the horse, because consciousness is built on the back of unity. Consciousness would not be allowed without the initial precondition of unity.
Bro, we're gonna have such a good conversation next week. I don't want to. I could literally just fucking keep going right now. We could just literally do fucking 2 hours right now, but I'm not gonna. Yeah, next week, man. What a teaser! What a teaser! That's gonna be a great conversation, bro. I'm looking forward to it. Okay,
I'd briefly
let's go
like
ahead and
to-
just basically we can keep going in a circle. We can open it up. Or Khalid, what kind of timeline are you on, brother?
I'm good today. I'm fine. I'm basically on holiday. I'm a teacher, so I'm on
normally what
holiday.
I would do is I would basically at this point, since everybody's kind of gotten a turn, it's just kind of open it up and people can kind of talk amongst each other and with you, and however people, they can ask me questions. I mean, I'm pretty simple, easy guy. I don't have probably much to offer necessarily, but anybody's welcome to ask me any questions they want about anything, and we could just free flow. We'll just chop it up.
So I briefly respond, is it okay, to dark light? I mean, I think we probably agree on a lot of things. Sometimes it's terminology, but like you mentioned unity, and you believe unity is a big thing, and I think Islam's pretty huge in unity. Like like, do you know the Mecca, the Kaaba, the black box that all Muslims pray towards, and everybody must go there once in their lifetime, where they meet all these other Muslims from different nations, and it creates amazing unity, and they have to wear like really simple clothes, so nobody feels rich versus the poor people. And that's like people like Malcolm X. He used to be a racist. He used to, like, they say black people are the best, and there's no way black get together. And then he went to Mecca, and it completely changed his life, where he saw people from all races all together in unity, in harmony. Yeah, so I would say Islam's pretty big on unity. What do you think? Dark light.
I don't know enough about the specifics of it to agree. Right now I'm just listening to you to try to learn. I admittedly I do know the least about Islam as compared to the other two Abrahamic religions. So I'm listening for sure. But
do you know about Mecca? Do you know about Mecca, where Muslims go to it?
Yeah. That's like
okay.
That's a pretty well known thing about Islam.
Okay. Yeah. So cool. Maybe we'll talk about it in our stream or something. We'll pick a topic.
Yeah. Do you have a email?
Oh yeah. Cool. Yes, Khalid, Sophia. I should have it on my little thing. So I'll post it even in the chat or something.
You can put it in the private. Put it in the private chat. I think it might be easier.
Cool.
Sometimes, sometimes YouTube doesn't like emails and links and stuff. So if you put it in the private chat, it works a lot better usually. And I assume, Khalid, I assume that your email is on your description of your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, I think it is. But yeah, I put it there. KhalidSafir@gmail.com. Anybody can email me. But let me just check out my YouTube channel again. I think it probably is. I'm quite sure it is.
I would highly recommend you link that up if you haven't, because it's a really great way to, as long as you want people to have access to it, it's a great way for people to be able to get a hold of you. Because otherwise, if they can only get a hold of you with leaving comments on your videos, YouTube strikes down so many comments. You know what I mean? It's better they can just get your email. Emily, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just thinking, I thought you were done. Sorry. I was just thinking about the racial thing, because I do remember reading about this, that modern Islam does tend to be more multiracial than the other religions. And like, even if you look in the way back though, you could say that about both. I don't know statistically which one would be more so, but like the early multiracial figures in Islam, you had Ethiopians, Persians, Byzantine Greeks, like that Suhaib al-Rumi, probably saying that wrong, but and you had East Africans, Arabs. So you did have mixed racial backgrounds, and it's so throughout the Quran, that attitude toward race. But in early Judaism, you actually did have, you could become a Jew simply by culturally living as a Jew. And if you were following the Torah, you would be referred to as a Jew. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know which would be more multiracial. Obviously, modern Judaism, you started having those sects that took that attitude of racial segregation.
I mean, with European empiricism, they spread Christianity like a virus, in my opinion. Like they would take anybody, they forcefully converted anybody look at what they did with European empiricism, spreading Christianity all over the world, killing hundreds of millions of people in the process.
Yep.
My understanding is Judaism is a tribal religion for one race. That's what I'll say. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what he just said, though, was interesting, because I guess being multiracial wouldn't divorce you of being capable of harm,
I had a question for hopefully he can hear me. I don't know if I'm coming through, but I've been having
it's a little rough, Scott.
Is it rough?
It is really rough,
but it's not clear. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Is that any better?
Much better.
Yeah, that's really great.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so Dark Light, you sent me some, documents and everything. I admit I haven't gone through everything yet, but when it comes to, I'm just wondering what you mean by grounding I guess reality into unity. What does that mean specifically? Is that sort of like emptiness with Madhyamaka, or what do you mean? Because that's how they would define the unity, like emptiness. Is it something like that concept?
Well, emptiness is a misnomer because there's no such thing as actual empirical true emptiness. Because anything you think of as empty is actually full of something. So that's actually one of the paradoxes that I acknowledge. Paradoxes number 4 in my Dark Light Decalogue of Traits. And so how I would ground unity to actual reality is empirically. You have the Big Bang. It was a singularity point at which everything was unified, and then it spread out into the multiplicity, and you have entanglement, which has been empirically shown that anything that has at one point been in contact still has a connection regardless of the space or time in between it. So even within at the most fundamental level of um, uh, atoms, and which comprise all of creation, you have an embedded element of unity. So that is one of my empirical groundings of unity for reality itself.
Well, that's restating Madhyamaka Buddhism when it talks about emptiness, because that's the whole paradox with the concept that from everything is empty, and it's a relation, and a relation isn't a thing, so it's empty of thingness or content in that way. So I think you're saying kind of the same thing, because I would look at like quantum non-locality, relativity theory, block universe, all of that stuff is just, saying emptiness again, relation.
I have a whole chapter where I compare and contrast my dark light theology with many different religions and philosophies, and Buddhism is one of them. And Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, and Taoism are some of the philosophies and religions out there that most closely align with what I have come up with.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I can't wait to read the book, brother.
Scott, just really quick, you mentioned this type of Buddhism I've never actually heard of. Is this part of the Theravada or Mahayana tradition?
I'm not sure.
Do they believe in the role of the bodhisattvas or the devas?
I believe it's the devas.
So that would be the Theravada. Okay.
Well, if it's Zen Buddhism, it's a separate branch, like all together. I think, don't quote me on that, but it's just basically Japan has its own its own brand. Sorry, country I would say, but anyway, Japan has its own branch, and then within that there's basically like postmodernism, Buddhism, and then there's like the whole. Sorry if I'm.
No, Chris, you're right, because like other religions, it has branched off. I was thinking more of the traditional link. I'm trying to figure out how far back that goes or what it links to. But there's secular Buddhism, which is something I technically ascribe to myself. I don't believe in the supernatural stuff, although Buddhism doesn't even consider itself to be supernatural, that everything is natural, even reincarnation and karma. I see those as being supernatural with my particular view of the world. But so I don't buy into that stuff necessarily, although I think it's very interesting. But I do believe in the process, the philosophy of the middle way, and other teachings that you get from Buddhism. I think are extremely useful if we could apply them to our lives. Very useful.
Madhyamaka, the word Madhyamaka means middle way. That's exactly.
There you go.
So it's very much in line with that, and that's why, like when I talk about my version of idealism, I'm really appealing to Madhyamaka as the grounding for what appears as content in creation. Like, both the physical is real and the consciousness, but it's all sort of grounded in that relation. So you could say that your experience is what it's like for your human brain as a physical unit, right? Just as a unitary thing. But at the end of the day, everything is unified and it's backed up by that same philosophy Darklight's talking about, just grounding it into this unity, which is a monism, and which is really supported by a lot of scientific evidence too. So that's kind of why I appeal to it.
You could definitely look at things like a quantum field, for example. But yeah, absolutely. That's
Yep.
yeah, it's interesting how physics. There's a young lady who I've been talking to. I'm trying to get her to be a guest on my channel. She's very well studied in philosophy and in theology, and she talks a lot about non-dualism and Buddhism, Hinduism, a lot of different actually Eastern religions, Taoism, and stuff like that. But she also links it to physics. Really smart lady. But I don't know if I'll get her to be on my show or not because I have such a small channel. But hopefully, I'm trying to make that work.
Yeah, that sounds like someone I'd be interested in for sure, man. Because that's right up my alley. I try to stick to philosophy, theology, and physics and quantum physics. So those are some of my top subjects that I get into.
Problem is that it takes a lifetime to be an expert in any one of those, to be honest with you. Now, when it comes to philosophy of religion or theology, you can pick a particular branch, and really hammer down on it. You don't have to be an expert in all types of philosophy. Just philosophy of ethics alone, once you get to like first level, second level, third level stuff, I mean, it gets so fucking deep. Most people wouldn't even have any idea what you're even talking about. So you could spend your whole lifetime just studying virtue ethics, for example, or philosophy of morality and philosophy of ethics. But when it comes to physics, to be a physicist, I mean, that's a lifetime commitment if you're going to really be, a good expert physicist just alone. Not enough time in a day.
It goes in so many different directions. There's so many different theories and branches of study within any one of them, philosophy, theology, physics. But I don't have to be a complete master at all of them. For me, it's about the journey, and at least I'm doing something constructive with my time instead of just scrolling through the phone on YouTube, because I've been really just hammering down on writing my book, and in doing that, requires a whole bunch of studying within these fields. So I don't care if I do ever become a master in someone else's eyes. I'm just trying to become more adept in my own eyes and more literate and able to discuss these important issues, because the most important thing for me is to present a path of holistic synergy to help humanity travel into the future in a more healthy and productive way. So that's, even if I contribute a small part of that help, at least I'm on that path of doing that and doing something productive and valuable with my time.
Well, that's the difference between you and guys like I don't know who on this panel might happen to know. When I was talking to Andy, I mentioned Jack, if you know who I'm talking about, but he says a lot of things, but they really just come across as being platitudes because I haven't heard an actual plan. I haven't seen actual structure to actually implement any of these ideas. Whereas somebody like yourself, you're actually putting in the work that it takes to materialize and realize these ideas. Because we can all have a great idea. We can all, repeat some fancy quote, be the change you want to see the world make, from Gandhi or something like that. But if we can't, apply that to our lives, if we don't have a system or a structure of how to actually implement that into reality, it's just platitude. It doesn't mean anything. There's no value to it unless it inspires somebody else to do something useful, right?
Volume 3 of my book is all about taking the lessons learned from the first two volumes and applying them specifically to improving society. And there's nothing that's decreed. It's only offered, and the whole point is inspiration. If I can inspire someone with my ideas to do something better, then that's all the entire journey of the book is there for, is for inspiration and for not just not just hope in like a disconnected way, but to supply a real hope of actually achieving a better world and to provide possible solutions to get there.
I love it. I love the sound of it because I do believe, even though I'm not a non-dualist, I think there are a lot of actually philosophical problems when you actually break down non-dualism. And I'll be interested to hear what you think about some of these objections I have to it next week. But I think that, and I've said this before to Scott, I think that just adopting this as a principle to consider how to approach life, to think that we're all connected, that at a fundamental level could be a motivator or a catalyst to eliminate conflict. Because if you actually believe that you're connected to all other humanity, then it seems like it would be more motivating for you to be nice to other people, right? Because you think that the other people are you in essence, right? So, or you share an essence with other people. So I do think there's a practical reason why people could be motivated and maybe should be motivated to adopt a more of a non-dualist mentality. Whether it's true or not, I think becomes secondary almost at that point.
I don't consider myself a non-dualist personally, because I do acknowledge dualism, but I acknowledge an underlying unity that supports that dualism. So there is a subtle difference there.
So the important part I would say about non-dualism is to know that first of all, the real import and impact of it is as a practice, not a belief. So it's to see the world in that perspective isn't necessarily a belief you sort of adopt, but it's sort of something you acknowledge through observation. Like just all you have to do is look at the here and now. It's not about other realms or some weird reality outside of reality or anything like that. It's just the recognition that there's just one reality and we're not outside of it. We're part of it. We're a process within it. And everything is a process within the same one reality. And part of the reality is to see, the subject object split, what we call duality. So non-duality isn't about rejecting that observation or not acknowledge that there's this dual reality that we all have to use. Otherwise we bump into objects all day. Right. So we have to acknowledge that non-duality is pointing to the fundamental, just like you're saying there, Dark Light, with the underlying substrate of it all is a unity principle that combines everything. And you can kind of see it when you look carefully at like relativity theory, quantum fields, things like that. That's where you can actually observe it in a scientific perspective, but you can also see it in a psychological perspective, a perceptual perspective, if you will. So that's I think it's just saying the same thing. I think a lot of this just breaks down into semantics, but that's just my take.
It looks like Dark Light dropped. It might be an internet issue or something. Now, Chris, he's back. Yeah, probably internet connection issue. Chris, you've been quiet for a long time. Did you have anything you wanted to get back into or add to any of this? I don't want you to feel like you're in the back seat there.
No, I don't really have much to say for the context of this conversation, to be quite honest. So thanks for having me, and I'll catch you later.
Thank you for stopping by, Chris. I think it is. My wife is kind of looking at me like it might be getting to be close to dinner time. So I always like to give everybody final thoughts, just uninterrupted. And since Chris is stepping out, maybe that is a good time to maybe wind things down. So Khalid, I'll make sure as my featured guest today that you have the final word. So let's start with, I guess we'll just go in the reverse order of whatever is going on here. So Dark Light, why don't you go ahead and you have the first closing remarks. Tell people where to find you, what you're working on. Tell people to make sure and tune in next week to this channel so you can hear more about what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't have any active channels right now, which I got to get on as part of my pre-launch strategy for my book. But I am writing a 3-volume book. Each volume is going to have roughly 1,000 pages or so, give or take. I don't know, but it's taken way longer than I thought it would, which is fine. It's all part of the journey, but I'm making slow progress, but it's high quality progress. So my biggest thing is I just like to talk about people, because communication is the actual key to easing the pain and suffering of the world, because there is pain and suffering which we can't do anything about, but a good portion of the pain and suffering of the world, there can absolutely be something done about it. And so just the more we talk about it, and the more people talk about their differences, the more we might see that we're more alike than we thought at the beginning of our encounters. So thank you for having me. I was just wanting to jump on real quick. I've been working on my book left and right. I was working on it before I hopped on here, and I'll be working on it again after I get off. So thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Stay beautiful, motherfuckers.
I love how you said that. I'm so on the same page with you about that communication. I love how you articulated that, brother. When you said the more that we communicate about our differences, the more we realize how alike we are. That's just beautiful, man. That's really well put. I'm sure if you speak that eloquently, and I found you to be very intelligent, I'm sure your book is going to be really good. It's probably going to be a lot. It's probably going to be pretty heavy. So I do look forward to seeing it when it finally comes out. Thank you so much for stopping by, Scott, brother. You've got the floor. Be sure to let people know who you are, where you are, what you're all about, and then we'll move on to Andy next.
All right. So I'm Scott, the non-dualist. I've got my channel, The Mirror Point. My co-host is Sophia. We talk about everything, from philosophy of mind to philosophy to, social issues of the day. For example, and how it all ties into those metaphysical or ontological models and perspectives and all of that kind of stuff. We have a lot of fun. So come on by. You can join the panel, talk, and we do just like we're doing here with Objective Ethics Channel. We try to keep, really civil conversation with people who may differ with us on different issues. And just kind of show by example how we can communicate better. So that's what it's all about. Come by if that's your thing, and love to have you. Anyways, it's me.
Very good. Thank you so much for stopping by. And Andy, you've got the floor, brother. So glad to have you stop by today. Anytime you want to stop by, you're always welcome here.
I don't really know what to say other than well, I don't want to tell anyone how to live their life, but if I could give advice, I would say don't get sucked into traditional religious interpretation. Don't let people online tell you what to think about ancient texts. Take the time to study them for yourself and come to your own conclusion. Be logical in your interpretation. Don't let your desires follow you. Don't let your mind be clouded. Don't let your life be ruled by drug addiction and desperation for comfort. Everything you ever wanted is on the other side of discomfort. And love everyone around you the best that you can, and accept your failures. I love you. Bye.
Yeah, man, a few words. Oftentimes people who say the least have the most to say. And I mean, there's nothing I can add to that. It was perfectly articulated. I really appreciate you sharing that. Emily, sister, it's such an honor to have you and the doggies stop by today. We love doggies on this channel, and we love our sisters and our brothers as well. And I just really appreciate you coming in, giving a female's point of view on some of the topics, because especially at the end there, we talked about, women's roles in the house and things of that nature. And it's one thing to have me sit up here and harangue about what I think my views are on that, but I think it's more impactful and more relevant to hear the sisters talk about it. So I just want to thank you. You've got the floor. Tell people where to find you, what you're working on. You've got some big projects in the works, I know. So feel free to say whatever you want.
Thank you so much. And to have intelligent people counter respecting you is amazing. So I just want to say, my channel is Personhood Over Dogma, and I'll be posting some things there about what I'm doing. But the other channel, which has more subs, is Primal Bell Parody. And that one follows one specific case that I'm working on. But we're also working on some acts, getting them passed, and there will be some activism coming up both in the summer and in the fall. And I'll keep everybody posted on my channel. Also, I'll be hosting the women's show on Finding Gnosis on Wednesdays, but because there haven't been as many Finding Gnosis shows, it's open to everybody. I try to keep it like a couple hours for ladies and then everybody joining after that. And I was a little bit ill this last week, so I will try to run it longer as well. So a privilege to be here. Thank you so much, and everybody have a good one.
Oh, there's a lot to say there that you kind of got me fired up here. So I don't know if you were there yesterday. Yeah. So DNW asked if you would host the show because he had to cut it short. And yep. I told him that if you said you weren't able to do it. So I told him I would go ahead and do it if he wanted me to. I didn't actually think he would really have me run his channel because I'm not even a mod on his channel. I was quite surprised when he had me do it. And you've seen enough of my videos. I don't know how much you really watch my channel or not, but I'm sure you've seen enough of my shows, including today, that it's usually very respectful and very organized here. And yes. So when I was running DNW's panel, I literally felt like I was babysitting somebody else's kids. What a fucking shit show. I could not believe it. I've never on my channel, I don't think ever had to mute anybody or kick anybody ever. And now I've only been doing this for about 7-8 months now at the most.
Yep.
But still, that's, I mean, that's saying something. And I think it's because everybody here, for the most part, like I said, if 9 out of 10 people are acting respectfully and responsibly, the 10th person, if they're going to act like an asshole, they really stick out like a sore thumb. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Whereas
Indeed.
on DNW's channel, and this is no shade on DNW, I want to be clear about that, because I really respect the brother. I appreciate him. I would have not volunteered to help him out like that if I didn't, because it puts my reputation on the line to a degree. Because, when people see my picture up there and other people are just spewing hateful vitriol, racism, bigotry, whatever, like they tend to do, I can be associated with that stuff. So I was taking a bit of a risk there. But it was insane. I can't believe it was so stressful. I was literally like, I had to mute people multiple times. I actually ended up having to kick Vanguard's drunk ass out entirely. I mean, it's just such a mess.
And I think, to be fair, it's like a large tent type of show. So your channel is attracting, and not to be throwing shade, like you said, but intellectuals. And then you have another type of show where it's a combination of intellectuals and people having fun and people nefarious. So it can be a little bit of everything,
I do have a lot of very intelligent people who follow this channel. I'm really pleased and very, very grateful for that, because that's I'm not trying to necessarily just draw intellectuals. I'm trying to just draw a community of people who are willing to have respectful conversations about their differences. And we take all comers here, but it does seem like we have drawn a lot of intellectuals, very smart people who have a lot backgrounds in biology, in cosmology, and the STEM sciences. We also have people who know a lot about philosophy, people who have a lot of life experience. I mean, I'm really impressed with the IQ of the average person who watches my channel. I'm probably the dumbest person in the room, to be honest with you. I mean, there's some really smart people that follow.
Hey, sometimes I feel that way. I have my niche things that I'm good at. Andy has said he feels that way, and I think that's a mark of people that are that swag more intelligent. They know that they don't know everything.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier I don't know if you're here for it, but I said that fallibility is a virtue. We need to be almost certain that we can't be certain about anything. It's very important. Humility is very important, but we still have to have a healthy sense of ego. Just self-defeating, self-vilifying yourself. It makes no sense. Self-loathing. This is actually harmful. It's not a virtue. You need to have a healthy ego. All right, sister. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed having you here. All right, brother.
Have a good rest of the day.
Yes, ma'am. You've got the floor. Please be sure. Like I said, I've got all your links, as far as I know, in the description. Check it out. If I'm missing anything, email it to me and I'll get it included. Okay.
I just want to say thank you. Like, you've got an amazing channel with so many different people who are so respectful. Great. Like the internet needs a lot more of this. Some of the big YouTubers, I used to go to a place where I used to debate, where there was a lot more. It's called Speaker's Corner in London, fairly famous place. And it was quite aggressive and it would get more views, but it wasn't necessarily good. Some of my worst videos, well, I wasn't being aggressive, but other people were being aggressive. It got more views. So I just want to appreciate that you're making the internet a little bit better by doing your bit and encouraging people to be nice to each other and respectful and listening to different perspectives. And we're avoiding this echo chamber that people like to be part of. It's really healthy intellectually. So really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Objective. So your name's Daniel, is that right?
Daniel Leroy. Yep, that's right.
Daniel Leroy. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much, Danny.
Oh, it's been such an honor to have you here, as always. And just before you go, let me tell you, brother, for all the positive things, and I do really appreciate all those kind words, but the truth of the matter is all of the good things that you said about the channel, it's not even me. I'm only one member here, right? It's a group of all of us working together. So that means you deserve as much credit for it as I do. And so does Emily, Andy, Chris, right? Dark, everybody who stopped by, everybody who's in the chat. Robin really helps out a lot by regulating that chat. Some of my other mods, like Bionic, he's been here from the beginning. And I could just go down a list of names. Every single person that's contributing to this community deserves credit for all the wonderful things that you said, yourself included, and you're a part of it, an integral part of it. And like you said, the echo chamber thing is exactly what we're trying to address and avoid, because I call it collective ignorance, right? If the whole herd is running together and they end up running off a cliff, what good is that to anybody, right? You've got to have somebody stand outside the group and say, wait a minute, guys, we may not be going the right direction here. We need to stop and think about this. But there's this thing that Schopenhauer talked about it, that people are very afraid to go out, speak out against the group. And the group has a tendency to vilify anybody who does this. And it has nothing to do with the actual information. It has to do with the acceptance factor, right? Are you accepting what everybody else is accepting? Or are you basically saying, no, you're going to reject it. And therefore you're causing them to have to question their own sense of I don't remember exactly how he articulated it. I'm sure Schopenhauer did it a much better job than what I'm doing right now, but there is this sense of ego that gets involved, right? When 10 people are in the room and 9 of them all think that 3 + 3 = 5, and one guy is like, no, guys, this isn't happening. The fact that 3 + 3 does not equal 5 isn't even relevant. That's not the problem. The problem is 9 people are suddenly like, wait a minute, how come we're the idiot in the room now and this one person is making us all look bad? You know what I mean? So we want to be able to address that. And like I said, anything positive we could be said about the show, you were here today. You were a big part of it. You had some ideas. I think we found some points of agreement, and we also found disagreement, right? And we came at things from a different angle. But the one thing that was common among us is we were very polite to each other, and we always will be. Well, I don't see that ever changing. So I just thank you very much for being willing to come out and step out of the comfort zone of just being around other Muslims or just being with other religious people, and coming to a channel that has more skeptics than not, and being able to just represent yourself as a gentleman and somebody I like to call brother. I'm proud to call you my brother.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it. Yeah. You're my brother as well. And by the way, my channel is full of people from all walks of life. I'm always encouraging people to completely disagree with me. I enjoy that.
All right, I'm going to do just some closing remarks. Thank you so much for stopping by, family.
Thanks, bro.
I don't even know what I can add anything to the show. I think that everything that made this show what it is today was because of the wonderful people who joined, and the people in the chat. McTime, Logan, you stopped by. Joel was here. Joel just teased me today. Come up on my panel. For the first time, I made this big deal about, Joel, I'm so happy to see you. I can't believe you joined my open panel. And then right before he gets called on, he leaves. And he did that on purpose. He did that. He pulled the rug right out from under me. Joel, I'm taking you off my Christmas list. You're going to have to make that one up to me. Other than Joel, everybody else around here was amazing today. Joel, you're always welcome here, family. And it was such an honor to have you. You know that. So I just want to thank everybody for coming by today, for being a part of the show, for all the kind words, for being polite in the chat, for building each other up, for sharing ideas. And since I can't add anything of value at this point, I'm just going to say thank you to everybody. Remember, self-respect, mutual respect, respect for the planet. These are the bricks that we use to build the road that leads us to the good life we all want to live. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to hit that one yet. I've already screwed this up. I got this other media thing. Thank you to Geo Sam, who made me all this cool stuff here. Look at this.
Channel. 3.33 repeating, of course. That's better than I've done before. And Deacon Brennan, Willard, what do you do? Head to the deep at night. Oh shit, he just ran. plate, objective ethics will be on your plate.